Mm-hmm. Welcome to KUMB.com's live stream. It's Saturday afternoon. There is a football match going on. West Ham United are playing AFC Bournemouth in the Betway Cup, which would usually be our focus of attention on such an occasion. However, today, we're going to do something slightly differently. As I'm sure you are all aware out there, there have been a lot of things going on at West Ham United within the last 48 hours. It all began on Wednesday when we were told that the club had accepted a bid of around, anywhere between 12 and 20 million, depending on who you believe, for Grady Diangana, the academy graduate. That news was followed up swiftly, unsurprisingly, by rumours of a bid for Brentford Said Benrahma, about £20 million, which, not so surprisingly, perhaps disappeared when we were told that the club had been priced out of a move, which is a little bit strange because you would have thought they would have some idea of what Brentford were looking for when they initially made contact. The club also signed ex-Dons youngster Osama Ashley, which doesn't make up in any way for Diangana. On Thursday, Dan Kemp was sent out on loan to Blackpool. Thomas Souček apparently contracted coronavirus and was put into isolation. Diangana, meanwhile, entered talks with West Bromwich Albion and agreed personal terms. Moving swiftly forward to Friday, another transfer rumour arose, and it was a link resurfacing regarding Felipe Anderson's purported switch to Arsenal on a £5 million loan deal. That one is still on the back burner, as it were. The news of Diangana completing his move to West Bromwich Albion was revealed to the anger of a furious West Ham United fan base who had plenty to say about it on the KUMB forum and elsewhere on social media. And then, of course, what really prompted us to do this today was what can only be described as a quite extraordinary tweet from club captain Mark Noble, in which he described his own personal anger and dissatisfaction with the club's decision to sell Diangana to West Bromwich Albion, a tweet that was promptly liked and followed up by a string of his fellow first-team players and, of course, a number of former West Ham United stars as well. It kind of gave the impression it wasn't particularly spontaneous. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. We're going to discuss that today in this very special show, which we're calling West Ham United, a club in crisis, ? Just in case you're not sure. But hopefully we're going to figure out whether that's the case or not today. Joining me today, I'm delighted to welcome regulars Rio, a Bristol Hammer, the Pink Palermo, and Gnome with me on this discussion. We're going to be looking at all those aspects of the last 48 hours and, of course, keeping an eye on what's going on today. We will be joined throughout the show, which we're expecting to last around 2 hours, give or take 10, 15 minutes each way. We're going to be joined by Tross and Paul Colborn, hopefully from Hammers United, Sue Watson from the West Ham United Independent Supporter Association, and KUMB.com's very own Paul Walker, who I'm sure will have plenty to say on the latest goings on at the club. Before we do start, and while I'm putting out a few links on social media, as I said, the game has commenced. The Betway Cup match this year between West Ham United and relegated AFC Bournemouth, who will be playing in the Championship next season. Noam, do you want to tell everyone, for the benefit of those who might not be watching, what's going on down in Stratford right now?
Yeah, we're 1-0 down in the quest for the coveted, it says here, Betway trophy.
Yeah.
I can't remember the guy's name, Danjama, I think the guy's name is. Picked up the ball in midfield without being so much as inconvenienced by anything vaguely resembling a challenge. Just walked straight through, siphoned it past Martin. West Ham have yet to show any promise, any attacking threat. Bournemouth on the ball at the moment with a cross in, looking comfortable, Bournemouth. 13 minutes played and we're 1-0 down.
Do you want to take us quickly through the team then? No, have you got that to hand?
Yeah, bear with me a second. if you can come back to me on that one.
Okay, I shall do that. I'm just trying to add a couple of links while we're doing that at the same time. But anyway, Rio, let me come to you, buddy. First of all, let's go right the way back to Wednesday when we were informed that West Ham United had accepted a bid for Grady Diangana. Can you describe your instant and initial thoughts when you heard that news, please?
I think the initial thought was and feeling was one of shock.
Yep.
Because we mentioned we recorded our podcast on a Tuesday, wasn't it?
We did, yes. Yeah, we timed that really well, didn't we?
We inadvertently mentioned how well that he linked up with Heller. So, yeah, it's a little bit of a shock. But in hindsight, we again mentioned our sellable assets.
Yep.
On the podcast. Not one of us mentioned Diangana. So I'm trying to. This last 48 hours has pretty much stunned me, to be honest. I'm really stuck for words a little bit, but
yeah,
it's shock. But then again, I sit back and took a stock of it this morning. And I thought, only at West Ham can we manage to construe a transfer policy which is against the odds of everything that we set out 10 years ago. Was it the 10-point plan?
It was. Yep.
Yeah, we've gone against everything that we kind of set out from that, and I think the last one of them points was keep the fan base happy, and yep, swift kick in the nuts for that one.
Yeah, I think you've summed it up pretty damn well, really, to be honest. Briz, good to see you, buddy. Thanks for joining us on the stream this afternoon. Rio says, one of the players that we didn't cite as a possibility for being sold this summer was Grady. He's gone now. Were you shocked to hear that we'd accepted that bid on Wednesday?
Not shocked to hear it because it's West Ham. And I go back to, I look at Scott Duxbury when we had the big fire sale where the Icelandics went bust. So I think we've kind of had this kind of thing happen before. I mean, I remember under Duxbury that they called Upson, Parker and Bellamy into the office and said, one of you's got to go to balance the books. And I thought those days had gone. I thought, we were allegedly saved from administration by Sullivna Brady.
Yep.
We were told that we'd be leaving our home to go to the promised land where we would be the biggest club in London or one of the biggest clubs in London. We're just a three-ring circus, and I think nothing now shocks me when it comes to West Ham. I think I'm disappointed, absolutely. I think that we had a guy who's a young prospect here who's obviously well-liked within the club.
Yeah.
And I think, what does it say to all the other aspiring players, even at school age, that look to West Ham and go, I might have a chance to play for my hometown club if I work hard and play hard. When we sell players like that and we keep mercenaries on like Haller, you're just looking at the club and go, we've lost our heart and soul. We are now officially West Ham London.
Yeah. Sorry, if I can just break in there, Breeze. We've not only lost our heart and soul, we've just lost another goal at home to Bournemouth, I believe. So, no, do you want to...
plan.
My stream sort of just froze at the wrong moment.
Okay. Well, I can tell you that Bournemouth broke down the left and a low cross came in, not dissimilar to the Brentford goal, actually, last weekend. And we've played 17 minutes and 20 seconds. And the score is Premier League West Ham United 0, Championship Bournemouth, who, of course, are missing quite a few players as well today, 2. So it's just going from bad to worse, isn't it, at the moment, Breeze? It's not looking good.
Well, you can imagine it being part of the plan, can't you? This is why we needed to sell Diangana, because we need players to replace it. Look how bad we were on Saturday. It's almost like the players have been briefed. If anyone remotely attacks you, let them in, because we're facing pitchforks and flaming torches from the supporters outside the club. It is just the way we are. And I mean, nothing surprises me about West Ham anymore.
No, it's not good. Noam, let me come back to you. Pinky, I'll come to you in a minute, buddy. But Noam, have you got that team sheet for us?
I haven't actually, for some reason, since I sort of tried to navigate to it. Everything's gone a bit like our defence. Everything's sort of seized up. And
I've got it if you need it.
I have it.
You've got it, Rio. Please dive
Go for
in.
it, Rio.
Okay, starting lineup is David Martin in goal. A defence of Ben Johnson, Issa Diop, Angelo Bonner and Aaron Creswell. line up in midfield, we have Mark Noble, Pablo Fornells, Manuel Lanzini and Jared Bowen, augmented with Mikel Antonio and Sebastian Haller. So it's a reasonably strong side for us.
Yeah, it's pretty much, give or take a player or two, maybe first team or first 11 out there, really. So, excuse me, particularly disappointing start for West Ham. But Pinky, it's been that sort of week so far, hasn't it? What an absolutely astonishing and quite extraordinary past 48 hours it's been at West Ham.
I mean, where do you start? I mean, the 2-0 down to Bournemouth at home. Well, there's no shock there. I mean, I think let's be honest, you'd almost write the script for that any season. So not bothered about that game today. But the Diangana situation, you know, we have a vice chair who is the self-styled First Lady of Football, who has persuaded the business world she's a business hotshot. We have David Sullivan, who will bore you to death about. He's been in the industry for 30 years and he knows what he's doing. You know, we've got the 7th highest turnover in the Premier League, the 18th highest turnover in world football. You know, we are a rich football club, and yet again we are selling players to buy players. When I say buy players, that's allegedly buy players, because, you know, this very much looks like we've sold a very bright prospect. I don't know whether Diangana is going to be truly good enough for the Premier League or not, but we've invested the best part of a decade in developing him, only to get him to the point where he might be worth a starting place, and then we sell him to a club clearly against the player's wishes. And you're thinking, the signals that sends to every other academy prospect, the signal it sends to senior players. You know, when you have the club putting statements on the official website from Sebastian Haller saying how much he's looking forward to playing with Grady Diangana, you know, and so you have the club record signing giving the big up to the young club prospect, and the following day we've sold him.
And of course, it's not just Sebastian Haller. I mean, this week we've seen the club post various memes and things on social media with Diangana's image on. And then, you know, 48, 72 hours later, he's been sold to West Bromwich Albion. I mean, what is going on at the club? There just seems to be, there's nothing. No one seems to be talking to each other. You know, I mean, you mentioned there that it appears as if Diangana has been sold from under the nose of Moyes. We understand, we're told that Moyes, you know, didn't really want him to go. And of course, we know the players didn't want him to go, but even the people at the club don't seem to know. So what does that say to you? Does that say this is purely a David Sullivan choice?
This is purely about cash flow. I mean, understand where we are financially. We are absolutely on our uppers. We have wasted fortunes. So I've already illustrated that we receive enough income. It's what we do with that income that is hurting the club. And I don't really want to start picking on individual players, because a player will accept the contract he is offered. You know, it's as simple as that. But who is offering these players these contracts? You know, a wage bill of £136 million for our club, and yet we are told the only player for whom we have received a bid is Grady Diangana. You know, so we're paying 136 million to players that nobody else will pay money for. This is gross mismanagement at boardroom level. This is absolutely shocking. And the warning signs for me were when they had the rights issue back in May and June to raise £30 million. It was never, ever going to be sufficient. Stick a naught on the end of that number, make it £300 million. And that then would probably be the sort of money that West Ham United need injecting into them to be properly funded, have enough working capital and cash to run the business properly. And from day one, David Sullivan, David Gold have not invested enough money in the club. In fact, from day one, they've been taking money out. 18.7 million of cash in interest payments. Wow, that's just about the same fee we got for Diangana.
Well, I mean, this is it, isn't it? It's something that we pointed out last night. Is that it's almost pound for pound an equivalent sum, which is in itself quite extraordinary.
It's astonishing.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Thank you, Pinky. No, where does the board go from here? I mean, we've said for years that the fan base has been fractured and fragmented, but I don't think I can recall a time during their tenure where the fan base has been so united, but it's united in opposition against the board, it seems. I mean, of course, it's not the case that everybody feels they're doing a bad job, but it certainly is the case that the only people talking about what they're doing are those that are, disenfranchised, disaffected, and completely demoralised.
Tell me who's saying that they're not doing a bad job. Because
that's the point, isn't it? That people who don't feel they aren't saying anything at the moment. I guess they're.
It's the only sort of dissenting voices in the sort of stream of stuff that's anti-board, if you like. The only dissenting voices you're hearing are from people like, I don't know, a Scott's idiot on TalkSport, for example.
Yes, we'll come to Jim later.
We'll come to him later, will we? But Hammers United is both an organisation and a statement of fact at the moment, because I can't think of certainly nobody I know or speak to who has any sort of interest at all in the club has got any desire to see the current ownership extend more than 30 nanoseconds if it could be helped.
Yeah.
There are all sorts of reasons why people might want to hang on there. Obviously, there are these various clauses that will reduce their profit in the event of a sale. But having said that, just going changing subject totally, we're already making a substitution. Young Ben Johnson, who's had a torrid time on our right-hand side, has been taken off, and Fredericks has come on.
26 minutes gone, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So sorry, just to go off track there a bit, but Fred Johnson was getting a torrid time at right back. Everything was coming down there. Bournemouth had a couple of chances down his side before they actually scored, and he just got caught. I don't know if he was, but he was in a non-friendly game. There was a Stonewall yellow where he hauled somebody down a few minutes ago. So
well, we'll keep an eye on what's going on there. It's as you said there. It's currently West Ham United 0, Bournemouth 2.
Getting back to the
go on.
Sort of thing. Yeah, so getting back on track. Yeah, the fan base is united. I've gone full screen on the laptop now for the football stream, but the stream was on the club's official Facebook page.
Yeah,
and you get all the comments going down, and every other comment was GSB out. So it's not like anybody official wouldn't actually know.
Yeah.
As we waste the free kick in a good position as usual.
Yeah.
There is literally, I can think of no supporter who has any interest in seeing the current ownership continue.
Okay, well, there was one person, Rio, who was backing the board within the last 24 hours, who Noam briefly touched upon there. Our old friend Jim White, formerly of Sky, now of TalkSport, who castigated the West Ham supporters and basically implored them to start backing the board. What did you make of that?
The man's completely deluded. We know, well, we can assume we know where his loyalties lie.
Yeah.
Because we've all seen footage. We've all seen the pictures of him smooching in our corporate areas. And the whole ethos of TalkSport is to draw in listeners by creating havoc.
Yeah.
And he thrives on it. But there must come a point where you actually see the truth. You see what's happening day in, day out. You see the general consensus of not just one little small group of support. It's the whole support. It's 99.9% of it.
Yep.
Yet he still maintains that we're the ones deluded. Take a look in the mirror, you Scottish idiot, basically.
Yeah, I think that was generally speaking what most people. It was quite ludicrous. But to be fair, I think to in the interest of balance and fairness, I think Natalie Sawyer, his co-presenter, did offer an alternative opinion. Of course, we know. I mean, this is the thing. As I wrote yesterday on Twitter, we know how TalkSport operates. It's there to wind people up and to, try and elicit a response from supporters. That's how they make their money. But I guess there is a point where it sort of becomes quite dangerous, and when you sort of start intimidating a fan base and unnecessarily. And I just wonder if they've got a responsibility, TalkSport. But anyway, that's another show entirely. But Jim White, of course, had plenty to say. Someone else who had plenty to say within the last 24, 36 hours was the West Ham United Independent Supporters Association, one of the two main supporter groups who are leading the charge for change at the club. They released a statement yesterday on Grady Diangana, and I'll just read that out to you briefly, if I may. They stated, sometimes all it takes is a mere spark to start an inferno. And it would appear that West Bromwich Albion's signing of Grady Diangana for an undisclosed fee is an example. For many West Ham fans, Diangana was a really exciting prospect whose return from a loan spell with West Brom was eagerly anticipated. He is a player who came up through the ranks at West Ham, first joining the youth team in 2010 at the age of 12. The club have justified this sale on the grounds that it is in the best interests of West Ham, and the money received will be reinvested entirely in the team. The club's statement also notes that Diangana spent last season on loan with West Brom because he found himself in competition for a wide attacking position. The WHUISA can only echo the comments made by a contributor on KUMB. If you needed to make a sale to reinvest, you don't sell an upcoming prospect to a similar Premier League club for a paltry sum. If Grady's departure is the spark, the catalyst for spreading the fire is the response from Mark Noble. And of course, they go on to mention Mark's tweet, in which, just to clarify exactly what our club captain said last night, Mark took to Twitter, as I said, a quite extraordinary message, which totally went against, the club, basically, or the board at least. And he said, as captain of this football club, I'm gutted, angry and sad that Grady has left. A great kid with a great future. As I say, that was quite extraordinary in the circumstances for a club captain, to come out with a comment like that. The WHUISA statement ended by saying, Noble's tweet has been liked or endorsed by several other members of the first team. And when even our captain is voicing anger at the direction the club is taking, the decisions being made, the running of our club, then something needs to change. Our club and West Ham fans deserve better. One of the architects of that statement, or at least I presume she was, is West Ham United supporters, Independent Supporters Association, Sue Watson, who, as you can see, joins us now. Although, Sue, I believe this is an outside broadcast this afternoon. You're looking a little bit windswept there at the moment. Can you hear us, Sue? I'm not sure if Sue can actually hear us at the moment. It might be very, very windy out there. Oh, so I think you might be on mute. I don't know. We can't actually hear you at the moment. We've got no audio coming through. We can see your lips moving, but we can't hear you. Classic live TV here from KUMB, as you can see. Problems with our first guest. So we don't seem to be able to hear you, I'm afraid. So I don't know if there's an audio issue your end. I don't know if you can perhaps look into that, and we'll come back to you as soon as we get that resolved anyway. But Mark Noble's tweet, Pinky, what did you make of that when that came out? I mean, it really was quite extraordinary, was it not?
I was absolutely flabbergasted, to the point where I walked around the pub in which I was at the time, showing it to every West Ham United supporter. Yeah. And I was just gobsmacked. I mean, this is the club captain. This is the club's longest serving player on the payroll at the minute. This is the player that the club have invested very heavily in terms of image development, in terms of Mr. West Ham.
Yeah.
This is the player that most of the media would absolutely pin as, you know, the current leader of the West Ham United playing staff.
Yeah.
No question about it. So he in playing terms, he's our top boy in that sense. And for him to tweet what he did, if he just said he was sad to see Grady go, that's one thing. If he said he's sad and upset, that's another thing. You start using the word angry, angry to see him go, that's a totally different implication what you're coming with there. That is a direct criticism of the club's senior management. And I don't mean David Moyes, I mean Mr. Sullivan, Mr. Gold, Mrs. Brady. And it's extraordinary because they'll punish Mark for that. You know, whether they fine him at some point, whether they remove the captaincy, and then we have the farcical situation, of course, if they take the captaincy from Mark Noble, which I sincerely hope they don't, but if they did, then you go to Declan Rice probably as the next obvious one. Yeah. Of course you can't, because most people would believe if he doesn't now, he'll go next summer. Yeah. And therefore you don't really want to be giving the captaincy to him.
And of course, Pinky Declan was one of the players we spoke about who liked Mark's tweet. It was essentially sanctioning what he was saying.
And this is the problem that the owners of the club now have. You've got a number of senior players. I think Jack Wilshere piled in as well. Yeah. You know, 2 or 3 of the others have all piled in and said, we're right behind the skipper here. And so you've got an expensively assembled squad who are losing belief in the direction the club is taking, and they're actually saying it very publicly. Yeah. And the Premier League season starts in a week, and the manager now has to make some kind of competitive spirit out of this and say, well, you know, here we go again. And I'm afraid we are at the point, and you know, we were in the room 2.5 years ago, Graham, and we made the point to Karen Brady that the shareholders should set a realistic price for their shares and go. That was 2.5 years ago. Yep. Then we've seen on the pitch protests from supporters. We've seen the outrageous banning orders handed to some of those supporters for what were legitimate protests, in my opinion. We've seen the birth of Hammers United, the continued development of WHUISA, a march with 8,500 people on the Greenway opposing the current club ownership. Yep. What the hell are they hanging on for? Do they really feel there's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow that they're going to drag out of West Ham United now?
Okay, good stuff. Good stuff.
Great. While you're there,
go on quickly, no, because I want to bring Sue in. We've now got Sue on audio, so no, very quickly, if you will.
Very quickly, while we were trying to talk to Sue before, the ball was played to Lanzini, who instantly made that rolling hand signal to be substituted. He's come off and went straight down the tunnel with an unspecified injury. Cullen is on.
And it just gets better, doesn't it, at West Ham United? So that's Johnson and West Ham 2-0 down at home to Championship Bournemouth in our prestige friendly. Lanzini and Johnson already substituted. We're not even at half time yet. Amazing stuff. We are, however, delighted to be joined by Sue Watson, who has finally resolved her audio issues. As I was saying, Sue, you look a bit windswept out there. Tell everyone where you are right now.
Right. Well, I'm in the edge of the Peak District. Absolutely beautiful country. I made the mistake of thinking I'd get a couple of days away because it'd be all quiet. Yeah, big mistake. But nevertheless,
not much of a break for you, really.
Well, no. But it's nice to get away. A different room, different view, and it is beautiful, the country round here.
Yes, good stuff. Well, I'm glad you're at least. You've got some. What's the weather like? I mean, it looks a bit breezy up there.
It's breezy, but fine.
Good
it's
stuff.
fine.
Okay.
Good
Excellent. Good to hear. So let's talk about. I think have we got a goal? The ball's in the back of the net. Sorry, Sue. I'll come back to you very quickly.
No, that's fine.
It's looking like it. The ball played through. came through to Bowen, who put it in the net. I'm not quite sure there's it is a goal. They're back at the centre spot. There's no VAR today. There's a question of offside, but the ball is on the centre spot. But the people doing the video haven't updated the score bit. So,
well, yeah, that's why I was slightly confused because it still says, it says 2-1 there anyway. Thank you. No, Sue, my apologies for cutting in there, but a West Ham goal might be a rare thing indeed over the coming weeks. So I think
and to celebrate.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We were touching when you first came on. We were touching on the statement that WHUISA put out with regard to the sale of Grady Diangana. I've asked the guys here what their initial thoughts were when they heard that the club was selling him. How did that one hit you?
Right. Well, do you know, at the end of the day, you have to question what the ambition is that the owners have for this club, because from where I'm sitting, it's sort of bargain basement. Let's try and recoup some money. Let's do what we can. I know that they make this big deal about being West Ham fans. Well, they're not. Okay. One's a Cardiff City supporter. If they were true West Ham fans, they would put the club first, and they clearly don't. I mean, can I just go on the record to say that I do salute Mark Noble for coming out and saying what he did, because I think in some ways that takes guts. I wonder how long it's been brewing for.
Do you think, actually, just coming in on that, Sue, I mean, we of course all remember Mark wrestling a West Ham United supporter to the ground during the Burnley pitch invasion of 2018. Do you get a sense perhaps that might have been weighing on his mind, and he kind of felt a duty to, be quite obviously on the side of the West Ham supporters in this issue?
Yeah. Do you know, I think you're probably right, and you've hit the nail on the head. One of the things that you just asked me was, how did I respond? Yeah. I'm going to talk a little bit about how I responded to what Mark Noble put out. And then, of course, there was Issa and Jack Wiltshire and Declan Rice and so on. And the list is growing, of either likes or retweets or whatever, or even commentary. For the first time since we've left the Boleyn, actually, I almost felt a little bit, you know, the expression, the 12th man?
Yes.
Well, person in my case, but the 12th man.
Yeah.
I mean, we're all football people, so we get that. I used to feel that at the Boleyn. I used to feel that you're with the team, you're part of the team, you're wishing. In a funny way, I almost felt it was the other way around, that Mark and co were with us, the supporters, and they were our 12th man. So I felt more connected to the team, to West Ham, to Mark, Deck, etc., than I have for quite a while. Because I mean, I know we've said it before. I've said it. I know Tross and Paul Colborn have said it about the disconnect.
Yeah,
it is big. It's massive. The board just genuinely do not get how the supporters feel, and I heard something that Pinky was saying about you folks sitting in a room, blah, blah, blah. Well, I've sat in a room and it was with Tara Warren and a few other people. And I remember a previous chair of WHUISA saying to her, and this was before protests of any kind, any shade or hue, what do you think is going to happen unless you address how the fans are feeling? Well, that was a few years back. Must be 3, maybe. Well, clearly things have just got to a point now. I think it's at a tipping point. I genuinely feel that. I think it's clear that the supporters support the team. So Mark and co at the team. But the owners just need to go now. There is no other option.
Do you think that's the case? I mean, is that really it now? And but I people have been saying this for a while now, Sue, haven't they? That every time something happens, we get somebody say that's it, that's the final straw. But yet it still goes on. You wonder if it is just kind of water off a duck's back to them now. All this, but do you think this could be the one that sees them go?
I would like to think so. I mean, I know we've discussed at your last event that you held realistically, Gold and Sullivan possibly not till 2023, unless somebody comes in with stupid money. I can't see it. I think Brady just needs to go now. that would save the club some money. They're saying they're broke. You know, let's get rid. Blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
I think the fact that the team and the supporters are saying the same things is extremely important. I think that is a big moment.
Yeah.
I think, and if the captain of our football team is saying this and is getting supported by some of the senior players and a couple of the academies and ex-players, ex-people, ex-West Ham greats, that's significant. Whichever way you look at it, that's significant. I mean, I looked in some newspapers today as a matter of interest. I was kind of hopeful that the newspapers might pick up and be more on the fact that Mark had said what he said, not obviously any of the fan commentary.
Yeah.
But I do think it's a big moment in the history of the club.
Okay, we'll come back to that in a second. Talking of big moments, there's been another one in Stratford. West Ham have equalised. Briz, have you got the game on up there?
No, I've just put it on now. I couldn't get a connection. I just put it on, so I missed all the goals.
Okay, Rio, have you got the game on, or is it?
No, the stream was so poor I've had to duck out of it. So I won't try it again. But
all right, I'll in that case, I'll come back to Noam, who's our man on the spot. And Noam, if you just want to briefly, before I come back to Sue one final time, if you just want to take us through the equaliser there.
Yeah, cross from the sort of left centre, left midfield. Both Antonio and Bowen went in for it. Antonio didn't quite get on the end of it, but Bowen did. Nice header, nice goal. 2-2. The assault on the Betway Cup is still back on now. Then, sorry, the coveted Betway Cup.
Well, I guess we should be grateful for small mercies, given that's what's happened in the last 72 hours. But Sue, something I felt that you mentioned there that was quite significant. You mentioned that it's the first time where the fans and the players had really been seen to be on the same wavelength, and acting in unison. Do you get the feeling that was? I said it didn't feel spontaneous last night. The fact that Mark put out that essentially a statement, and it was immediately followed by a series of likes. Jack Wilshere made the comment about Grady going and going to a club where he's valued. Arthur Masuaku, a load of other players liked it. Well, as you mentioned, we had players like John Hartson, Trevor Sinclair, all come in. It kind of felt a bit orchestrated. Is that how it felt to you?
I did wonder, because you mentioned about the Burnley game, and I do feel that, I mean, Mark's been there for ever, hasn't he?
Yeah.
And he will have seen, and let's be honest, they're not the only bad owners we've ever had.
Of course.
But they're pretty bad.
They're up there with them, yeah.
Oh, well, yeah, they might be in a field all their own, some of them, sometimes. But he will have seen an awful lot happen. He will have lived and experienced an awful lot of their shenanigans. So he will have seen things that we will never see or really understand. I think, given the timing, I think he just thought, well, almost like, feck it, I've had enough. And he then put that statement out, because I think my impression was, from the way it was phrased, it's been bubbling for a while. He's been thinking on it for a while. He's had enough, or he felt something needed to be said.
Yeah. And
he said it. And actually, I'm going to say it again. I just applaud him. I just have so much respect for the fact that, in a way, potential. I mean, he's gone against his employer, hasn't he?
Absolutely. Yeah, he has. And I kind of agree. And I think it's nice, because I didn't like when that happened with Mark at the Burnley game, and he received a lot of criticism. It was tough, because essentially he's a modern day club legend. And you kind of got the feeling that's been burning on his mind for a couple of years. So I thought kudos to him for coming out and saying that. So good stuff. Before you go, with regards to WHUISA, what's your next step? Where do you go from here?
Right. Well, we're working on, and have been working with HU and the Football Supporters Association to get some meaningful, independent supporter dialogue at some level with the club. That still has to happen, I think, on one level. The other thing is, we're trying to push Brady out. Now, obviously, it's GSB out, but if we can get Brady out in the short term, short to medium, then obviously that will save them some money, if nothing else, and get a proper structure in place. The sort of things that we've been talking about, director of football, etc., since December, when we picked this up and Moyes came back in. Now, obviously, I know HU are talking about other things that they're going to be doing, and we sort of always publicly supported their protests and actually gone on the protests with them and encouraged our members to do that. So they're the kind of things that we're working on at the moment. We've got a committee member looking at in detail at some of the financial ins and outs and what's been going on. Okay. So we're hoping to be able to publicise that as well, just because, it's interesting. But that's the things we're working on at the moment.
Excellent. Well, that's fantastic. So really, really appreciate. Before you go, has any of the panel got any questions for Sue? Would anyone like to throw anything to Sue with regards to WHUISA? Anyone before we go?
How do you pronounce WHUISA? How are you supposed to pronounce it? Because I would just say the ISA.
Sorry, that was a quad bike went past on the towpath. Well, I always say WHUISA. But I mean, do you know what? So long as people aren't cussing at me, I don't care.
No, it's just I would just say the ISA because it's a lot easier.
Yeah, and that's fine. That's fine.
Pinky, I think you've got one for Sue.
Just to pick up on the point that Sue was making there about offloading Karen Brady to save some money, and people might not think that's a great deal. The excellent Swiss Ramble blogger, his last look at our accounts, he reckons that Karen Brady has taken £8 million in pay from West Ham United since joining the club. That's £8 million quid. And put that in context.
Does that include the bonus that was paid to her limited company?
Absolutely. But we're selling our bright young players because we're skint, and we're paying her for a part-time job, which, we're miles behind other clubs in terms of commercial income development. And I think, as a starting point, that's one out the door that most of us would welcome, but they need to be quickly followed by the rest.
Yep, 100%.
Excellent. Okay. Thanks, Pinky. Thanks, No. Sue, thank you once again. We really appreciate, as I said, we really appreciate you coming on live from the Peak Districts. I think that might be a first for a KUMB podcast. So thank you very much for doing that. And we're glad to see we got over our initial audio issues. The very, very best of luck with WHUISA. Let's call the whole thing the ISA, whatever you want to call it. We know what you mean with the future, and do keep in touch. And I look forward to speaking to you again very soon. Have a great holiday anyway. We'll see you again when you get back. Cheers, Sue.
Thanks,
thanks, Sue. So that's Sue Watson from the West Ham United Independent Supporter Association, live, as we said, from the Peak District, coming on to tell us what she thought about Diangana. We are at half-time in the Betway Cup extravaganza between West Ham United and Bournemouth. Rio, we haven't heard from you for a while, buddy. Did you manage to get it on, or...?
No, every time I get it on, it freezes. But we just heard word that Antonio is injured to compound all the other woes we have this summer.
Go to this menu here.
That's pretty unfortunate. So if we make that right, that's
get Diangana back on loan. Do you think?
We probably can afford it.
So I make that. That's 3 now we've lost, isn't it? I think we lost Ben. Or Ben Johnson was replaced by Ryan Fredericks. Lanzini gave the signal, and Antonio now off. So and we're being held by Bournemouth. So Rio, not particularly great start, is it, to a Saturday afternoon?
If I disappear, it's because I've got a call up, right? So there's only about 5 of us left because no one else wants to bloody well go to our club. So
I hope you got your boots at the ready, mate. You never know. Breeze, what did you have to make of what Sue had to say there from the ISA?
Well, first of all, I can't play for West Ham because I'll be cup tied for Chelsea when I make that move. But I think that I think the Sue really much spoke for all of us. I think we're all in that same position. I think that what they're trying to do is almost like move the mountain, isn't it? Because you've got two blokes here who are in sole control of the club. It's not like we've got a board that's really kind of spread out and is open to being moved around on it. We're basically owned by two people with a great deal of power. We've got the kind of henchmen underneath them. So I applaud Sue for everything that the Independent Sports Association can do to try and get them to move on. I was looking, I mean, David Sullivan 71, Gold 83. What's the future for us? And I mean, is it going to go to Jack and David, or I'm unsure what the future is for us. So even if Gold and Sullivan leave the club, I'm unsure of what we're looking for in the future. And I wish Sue every best in trying to kind of forward that agenda, really. So I agree with everything she said.
Yeah, some good stuff. Some very interesting comments actually that she made. I touched before on the point she made about the fans and players being, singing from the same hymn sheet, as it were, which hasn't always been the case. And she also, Sue mentioned that general feeling of disconnect between the fans and the club. And I think we've probably all felt that at some point, haven't we, in recent seasons, especially since we moved to Stratford?
Yeah, it's basically, it's got worse since we moved. I mean, as you're well aware, we had certain sort of connections which used to work quite well. Mm-hmm. The second we started to print anything that was in any way, shape or form critical of the owners, suddenly we're out on our ear, sort of thing. So, well, if you don't want us to criticise, run the club properly. And whilst they've got this thing that anybody who criticises them is automatically the enemy, this is just going to go on. And of course, you've got the situation, as I said earlier on, the support is pretty much united. I'm pretty sure. I'm fairly happy to say that if anybody wants to disagree with me, that the vast majority of West Ham supporters do not want them there anymore. And if there's any empirical evidence to the contrary, that quite happy to listen to that. But if that's the case, and if you're actually treating anybody who's even mildly critical of you as the enemy, and everybody's critical of you, well, you're at war with your own supporters, your own fan base, and no amount of window dressing, holding meetings, and saying, we'll put flags up with our old badges. Is actually going to sort of paper over that crack, which over the years, there's always been sort of a little bit of, whichever board's been in charge of us, there's always been a little bit of, friction between that. But, there's been ways of sort of dealing with that. And I don't recall any of our previous owners, opening fire on us the way this lot pretty much have. It's... coming
in on that point, if I may, I'm sorry, just coming in there quickly. We certainly felt that with Terry Brown. The whole Brown out movement went on for some considerable time, and whether or not that had any bearing on him leaving in the end is always going to be open to debate. Only Terry will be able to tell us that. But I don't remember that being the case with the Icelandic. I mean, of course, we all remember the fans with Eggy. It was like the old Benny Hill sketch, wasn't it? Where they would follow him around and slap him on the head.
Everybody wanted to slap his head for luck.
In a comical fashion. And I'm sure if slaps were, don't talk about physical violence, but I don't think, if any slaps were aimed at the current owners, that they'd be as friendly. But so it's not always been the case. It's not. I mean, West Ham fans, we know we take a great deal of interest in the way the club is run, not just the team. But it's the point I'm trying to make there is it hasn't always been that case. Terry Brown, we saw it. Yes, the Magnuson and co. Even though they essentially could have bankrupted the club, we didn't get that. But it's certainly come back again now.
The Icelandics, to a certain degree, maybe not the Icelandics them personally, but the people working for them engaged with the club, engaged with the supporters, didn't always agree. I mean, taking our position, we weren't always in agreement with the club, but it was any sort of disagreements were by and large sorted out amicably, and they work with supporters and were willing to listen to supporters. This lot is, if somebody's got something to say, well, you're wrong, and get out of my pub. Well, at this rate, there's not going to be anybody left to serve.
Yeah, no, that's it. I mean, sort of going back to the Icelandics quickly, I guess, you know, we'd have to point out that Scott Duxbury, who was the acting CEO towards the end of that time, was probably reasonably heavily criticised. But thank you for your comments. Just to catch up, as a brief catch up where we are now, we're talking about West Ham United. Are we a club in crisis? We have to obviously try to be impartial, so we'll leave that question open for you guys to decide. We've heard from Sue Watson of the Independent Supporters Association. We're hoping to get Hammers United on very soon. A couple of representatives from that particular supporters organisation. Hopefully they're going to be joining us very soon. The beauty of live broadcast is that you never know quite what's going to happen. So we can't, unfortunately, like David Gold, promise you that's going to happen, but we'll do our best to see that occur. We've had plenty. There's a lot of people joining us on the live chat now. So a hello to everyone who's watching us via YouTube, whether you're doing it on the on our channel via Knees Up Mother Brown forum, via Twitter, or simply through Facebook, any of our social media channels. But thank you. We really appreciate you joining. And we really also, we want to hear what you want to think. Let us know. You can use the KUMB forum. You can use the YouTube chat to let us know what you think of the board, the current situation, Mark Noble's comments, the sale of Grady Diangana, etc., etc. Because, you know, at the end of the day, we're just like you. We're just West Ham supporters who want the best for our club. We might not always agree, you know, with how that should be done, but, you know, we want to hear what you've got to say anyway. So let us know. Jump on the chat and tell us your comments. Pinky, some interesting stuff from Sue there. As I said, we're hoping to get Hammers United on again soon. How much do you think those two have played in terms of galvanising the West Ham fan base in opposition to the current administration?
I think they're playing a very significant role, you know, and against fierce opposition from the club, it must be said.
Yeah.
You know, right at the start, when the club established the supporters board, the supporters advisory board, meeting day one, they made it very clear it was not going to be a supporters trust. And right from the off, that implied we might have a chat with you, but you're never going to have any say in the running of West Ham United Football Club. So the battle lines were drawn there and then. We've seen the supporters advisory board get put into disrepute essentially because people saw it for what it was.
Yeah.
We then saw the so-called official supporters board be established and had individuals on there who, frankly, well, hang your heads, one or two of them. Not necessarily all of them, but one or two of them.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, you know, you're just in the wrong camp there. And I think against that backdrop, you've had WHUISA trying to do the right thing, a properly constituted supporters association. Hammers United again coming on board and doing exactly the same and galvanising supporters, you know, from the grassroots. And if people doubt the impact they're having, just have a look at the pictures of the 8,500 supporters who stood on the Greenway that day, you know, 200 yards away from the London Stadium. If Mr. Sullivan and Mr. Gold and Mrs. Brady, if they think they're winning the argument, if they think they're winning the hearts and minds of West Ham United supporters, there's 8,500 people who beg to differ. It's that simple. And the numbers are growing, they're not shrinking, because what we're actually seeing is a club that is invested heavily in spin and telling tales and positivity. Here's a great positive message and all the rest of it.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're sitting in 16th and 17th place, 4 or 5 years after you've sold your ground, and you're then watching, academy players being sold for knockdown fees, and the club defaulting on payments to Eintracht Frankfurt, the club using David Sullivan's definition of debt, now being £165 million in debt, which is considerably more than the day they took over the club.
Yes.
When you're actually watching all of that, and you're saying, does this look like success to any of us? It's so long since we've been anywhere near a trophy.
Yep.
Anyone below the age of 50 won't properly remember us winning anything.
Yeah.
And this is not what the supporters were promised. So that's why people are flocking to Hammers United and WHUISA, because there's an appetite for change. And fair play to those organisations. They're well organised, they're well disciplined, they're professional, they're doing things the right way. The club really should be listening to those organisations and saying, the supporters are not the enemy of the club. The supporters are the club. Understand that. And Mr. Sullivan and Mr. Gold, they're on a loser's mission, because they cannot beat 50,000 West Ham United supporters. Because there's 3 of them, Gold, Sullivan and Brady, and 50,000 of us. And we're West Ham and they ain't. And it's that simple.
Thank you, Pinky. Gnome has his finger up.
Ignore me. It's something else is strange happening with my my stream a bit.
Okay.
Okay, no, it does appear the comment earlier on that Antonio's injured, it does appear he's come out for the second half. I'll confirm that in a second when my stream comes back online. But
okay, I'm looking at the screen now, and I can't see him at the moment, but the boy's in the defensive area. While we're just waiting to see, Gnome, jump in at any point if you see that, or anyone else. Just gonna. Well, I want to say. I said a few minutes ago we'd like to hear what you guys have got to say. So we're going to have a little roundup of the KUMB forum and the KUMB Twitter feed, and also to see what you're saying live in reaction, really, to this particular broadcast on YouTube. A couple of the guys on YouTube. We have got Lowell Green talking about the vice chair, says that Karen Brady is a power freak and will never relinquish control. Kev Fisk, hi Kev, said the board is it's a board that no one wants. Players are revolting, they're selling off assets, and there's no likely incoming replacements. So he'd say, Kev says, yes, he does believe we are in crisis. I'm looking at Sebastian Heller. I still haven't seen Antonio, so we'll come back to that in a minute. We are about to be joined by my good friend, Mr. Paul Colborn from Hammers United, the chairman. Paul, if you could just bear with us for a second, buddy. I'll come to you very shortly, because we're just going to do a quick roundup to see what some of our fellow West Ham United supporters are saying on KUMB's various social media channels. Breeze, I'm going to come to you first, buddy. You're keeping an eye on the KUMB forum to see what people have been saying over there since Mark Noble's tweet. What have you got for us there, buddy?
Well, Adrian's number one says the club's rotten to the core. It's really interesting, actually, because although there are mostly dissenting voices, GSB says, well, who comes in if Gold and Sullivan go? And he's more worried about what the future could look like under someone like the Saudis or the Qataris that come in and run the club. Mr. Blue Sky says that it looks like they're trying to liquidate the club. Teachers have said they've done the one thing that nobody else could do, which is unite all the players and the fans under the same cause. Temporary says that he thinks that they're asset stripping the club. I think Sussex has said, what happened to the 10-point plan? Seems to have gone out the window. And Trabant says, are we sure this isn't just an echo chamber of the forum, and is it indicative of the wider fan base? Which I suppose is a fair question.
Yes, absolutely. It's something we touched on earlier.
As I said earlier on, if anybody wants to give me any proper empirical evidence that the majority of the fans are in favour of the current board, I'd be more than happy to hear it. Just that, we run a website, and our experience is that that's not the case.
Okay. Well, there's an opportunity there, isn't there? The offer's there. If anyone does feel that the current administration are doing a good job, let us know. We always try to offer a balanced opinion on KUMB, give everybody a voice and a platform. So, the stage is there. If you feel that they are doing a good job and that, Paul and Hammers United and WHUISA are wrong in this instance, let us know. We'd love to hear from you and hear why you feel that is the case, because it's looking from... sounding rather from what Briz is saying there, that the fan base is pretty unified in opposition. Briz, any more for us there before we move on?
Yeah, there's a long post from SH, which is absolutely brilliant, and I implore people to have a read of it because it kind of sums up pretty much what everyone's thinking, I think.
Okay.
And just McCabe saying, why don't we go back and ask the Birmingham City fans what helped them get rid of them out of their club? And it might be time to engage with those. So that just seems to be the general flow of the argument is generally that basically outrage at the way that we're being run as a club, which we've known for a long time has been the case. But it's interesting to read the comments in unison all the way through, bar one or two.
Okay, good stuff. Well, perhaps we'll come back a bit later and look at some more. Thanks, Breeze. Rio, before I move on to introduce our next guest, you've been taking a look at the KUMB Twitter feed to see what the followers there have been saying in the wake of Mark Noble's statement last night. What's the general consensus there?
It's very much...
Is there one?
Yeah, it's very much in favour of what we're putting across. That everyone is fed up with the way the club is being run at the moment.
Okay.
Tweet from Niall McDonald. Not much surprises me at West Ham after 39 years, but this January has done. Very strong words from Noble. Interested to see what happens next, albeit while looking through my fingers. Burke Feed Me has put, very surprised that Noble's come out, but also quite glad to see it.
Yeah.
Clearly, is as frustrated as we all are. It'd be interesting to see how this one turns out. And just to finish off, Kieran Wright. As painful it is to wash our dirty linen in public, the fact that the club captain feels angry enough to call them out makes me hopeful that the league tenureship is coming to an end.
Excellent. Thank you for that quick roundup, Rio. Again, we'll come back, I think, a bit later in the show if we get time, just to see what else, because we were absolutely inundated with responses to the content we were putting out there last night. This is not meant as a bragging post in any way at all, but one tweet that we put out under KUMB.com's Twitter channel received more than 500 retweets regarding Mark Noble's comments, which was, again, pretty unprecedented. It's been that sort of last 24 hours, hasn't it? Yesterday, in the wake of Mark's, known very quickly, if I can come to you.
I've got my picture back. Antonio is very much on the pitch.
Okay, so some good news today at last then. Michael Antonio isn't completely crocked, so that's good stuff. Thank you, No. I was just going to say that in the wake of Mark Noble's statement yesterday, one of our leading supporters groups, Hammers United, published a statement. I will tell you briefly what the guys there said. The statement they released read thusly: Hammers United understand that feelings are once more running high across our membership and the broader fan base, and will answer the call to deliver another large-scale protest as soon as it is safe and legal to do so in these unprecedented times. In the meantime, just like our club captain, we cannot remain silent. Accordingly, we are working round the clock to arrange a series of smaller scale protests inside the current legal confinements in an effort to show the board of the club and the watching world that we are all as gutted, angry and sad as our skipper, echoing, of course, the comments made by Mark in that extraordinary tweet that we keep referring to last night. Hammers United continue. We will also continue in our efforts to create a supporters board that is independent of the club, despite attempts in some quarters to scuttle the process. Now, more than ever, the voices of our members and all West Ham fans must be heard. We also recognise and respect that every individual has the right to protest and would urge those who will no doubt exercise that right to do so in a safe and legal manner. One of the chief architects behind the group, and presumably someone who had something to do with that statement, is friend of the show and website, Mr. Paul Colborn. And I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Paul to the show. Paul, I do apologise for keeping you hanging on there for a few minutes.
No, not at all. I'm very grateful
for you having me on, and hello to the rest of the lads. Actually, you took the wind out of my sails there a bit, mate, because what I was really going to do was read our statements out.
Oh, I do apologise.
Just a quick point. We are trying to get some dialogue with some of the Birmingham City fan groups, incidentally. But yeah, look, the events over the last few hours have been bloody heartbreaking, really.
Yeah.
And you know, we're entering a season which I think realistically is going to be a relegation fight. It's going to be a very difficult season.
Yeah.
We've got a particularly difficult start. And whilst teams bring surprises, one would expect the first game to be one that we're really looking to get points out of.
Yeah.
And yet we're going into this game in complete disarray. There seems no doubt that half the squad, if not all the squad, are disillusioned, disappointed, angry.
Yep.
There seems no doubt that the manager is in a very difficult position, because I'm in no doubt, certainly, that the manager didn't want the player to go. The player himself, I know for a fact, because I know someone who was talking to him a few days ago, there is no doubt that he didn't want to go.
Okay.
He was very excited about the prospect of this season. He just laid a couple of goals on for Haller.
Yep.
By all accounts, a very popular member of the squad, a young lad. As a supporter, I think I didn't really look forward much to the season, but I was looking forward to the young fullback, I can't pronounce, Nagaku or something, who went to Watford.
Yeah, and get Jeremy Ngakia. Yeah, yeah.
I was looking forward to seeing him play, Ben Johnson play,
Mm-hmm.
and most of all, Grady Diangana, because he's an attacking player, and we all like to see an attacking player.
Yeah.
You know, in the good old Harry Redknapp tradition, charging down the wing. It's good to see. And two of those have gone already, and perhaps now that the young lad that went to Watford, we might maybe think a bit more about maybe what went into that.
Yeah.
Of course, that leads us to where does that leave Declan? Where does it leave Ben Johnson? You know, what are their thoughts, and maybe prospective players that West Ham are trying to get in? You know, it stinks. Let's face it.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, I've said this before, but here's my pet thing. Thousands of supporters have walked away. Daily, more and more are walking away.
Mm-hmm.
This club was the heartbeat of Essex, and it was the heartbeat of East London for over 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way I can describe it, which I accept I did yesterday, we had something. I can't put a word on it. We had something, you know. We had that tradition, that heritage, our history, our camaraderie. We were a family over there. And we really had something special. And even when we moved to the Soulless Bowl, and even when it became apparent, Graham, that we'd been misled, I never thought we'd lose that something. I thought it was forever, you know. I never thought that they could take that away from us. And yet that's gone. And as if I say so myself, a pretty damn loyal fan over many years, I'm now beginning to sort of question, what is the point? What is the point of West Ham? And I think that when you love something as much as I, and I'm sure all of you and thousands more, when you love something as much as we love West Ham, sometimes there comes a time when you've got to stand up and be counted. And I made my stand a couple of years back.
Yeah,
and I think Mark Noble made his stand yesterday evening. And we've seen. Sorry, come on.
Sorry, Paul. Yeah, just to come in on that, that's one thing I really wanted to ask you about, because we spoke about this with Sue. I don't know if you caught that previously, but we spoke about that particular occasion, the Burnley protest, and of course, you were more closely than involved with that than anybody else, not just on the panel, but in the entire West Ham fan base. For those who are unaware, if there is anyone out there who doesn't know what part Paul played on that day, Paul was the guy who marched towards the centre circle with the corner flag, emulating that bond scheme protest from 30 odd years earlier. But what I wanted to say there is, of course, what we remember from that day was Mark tackling a West Ham fan on the pitch, which is something that a lot of fans have kind of had an issue with since. And I said to Sue, you kind of felt a sense of Mark addressing that finally last night with the tweet, which firmly put him back on the side of the supporters. I mean, is that how you see it?
Well, without a doubt. Mark is loved by our fan base.
Yeah,
he's one of our own. He's a Canning Town boy.
Mm-hmm.
But as a fan, I was a bit disappointed actually with what he did against Burnley. But
yep, people
forgave Mark. It was a spur of the moment thing. He acted as he thought, was the right thing to do. And we're all adults. You brush yourself down and get on with it.
Yep.
And because it was Mark, I think the fans sort of mostly forgave, and it wasn't a really big thing made of it. But yeah, I think maybe he put some of his own demons to bed last night.
Yeah.
We've seen, of course, that he's had support from other members of the squad, and I think as each sort of few minutes goes by, the support comes in from somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm thinking, I may be wrong, but I'm adamant that I'm right, really, is that they're minions, Golden Sullivan, your Claret and Hughes and your Jim Whites. They really are. They're trying to hold back the tide here. And you think when you were a little boy or a little girl and you were on the beach, and I used to build a bloody grand sandcastle and a moat around it, and the tide would come in, and you'd defend that castle, didn't you? And you'd have your bucket and your spade throwing sand on the tide, but the tide engulfed you in the end. And these people are fighting a losing battle. I'm sure of it. But what I believe Mark's tweet has done last night, I believe that's accelerated the coming, if you want, of the end game. And I believe that the end game is now upon us. I believe that, as I say, Mark did last night what I did 2 years ago. He stood up to be counted for something he believed passionately in, and loves the club. And I believe now that West Ham fans need to stand up and be counted. I think this is the end game. I think we need to get rid of them when there's still some fans left.
Yep.
They need to go when there's still some spark left, something to build on for new owners. And I believe it's all or nothing now.
Okay, good stuff. Paul, if I could just break in quickly, we're just going to go to Stratford for a second.
Okay.
Bournemouth have scored again.
And
again, in fact, they've scored twice since we got you on. It's now West Ham United 2, Bournemouth 4. So it's calamity stuff down there. Michael Antonio is struggling once again. It's all going quite horribly wrong on the field. Of course, we know it's going horribly wrong off the field. But one question, and I think this is probably Paul. I'm going to go to the panel in a minute and see if the guys there have got some questions they'd like to put to you, because they've been very, very patient with me this afternoon. And the big question, I think, that is on everybody's lips with regards to yourself and Hammers United is, when will you look to protest next? Is it inevitable that you're going to protest?
What I was going to do, Graham, but as I say, you took the wind out of my sails, but I was going to read our statements out.
Yeah.
But it is exactly, we've been very careful how we've worded that statement.
Okay.
And the answer, with respect, and I will take questions, to go over it again. We understand that feelings are once more running high across our membership and the broader fan base, and will deliver another large-scale protest as soon as it is safe and legal to do so in these unprecedented times. We've taken advice, and the advice was as we expected. We cannot organise a large-scale demonstration with more than 30 people.
Okay.
We believe that if we were to do that, apart from the fact that I and Tross would get a 10 grand fine, there seems little doubt about that. We like to think, kept the high moral ground. We've always stuck within the confines of the law.
Yep.
We believe we have the press broadly on our side, and we feel that if we broke the law, I don't think there's anything the club would like more, to be frank. It would give the club a stick to beat us with. We might lose press support, so we are not going to do anything, not within the lawful confines. Also, we have obviously a responsibility to our members I mean, we do not tell our members what to do. We can advise them and ask them for their help. And I think it would be wrong anyway to ask our members to protest, which could perhaps compromise their health and safety at the moment. However, the statement moves on. We will deliver. No, sorry. Accordingly, we are working around the clock to arrange a series of smaller scale protests inside the current legal confinements in an effort to show the board of the club and the watching world that we are all gutted, angry, and as sad as our skipper. So I made I think it's widely known how rubbish I am at new technology. I sent a bloody email out to not only our committee, but people I consider friends, looking for some ideas. And I've already got plenty of my own, as is Tross and the rest of the committee. And what I did, instead of reminding them to just send the bloody ideas back to me, I just sent them. So 30 people have been sending their ideas to 30 people. But we've got plenty of ideas. But with respect, I don't really want to go into that.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough.
What we do realise is we've got to be clever. Yeah, we've got to use our heads. Protests aren't just thousands of people charging down the Greenway. There are more ways to skin a cat. You know, I think I best leave it at that.
No, that's absolutely fine. I mean, I think that really people just wanted to know that, you know, you haven't sort of become dormant
not at all
as a result of the pandemic, that you are still working furiously behind
the reason
scenes.
I'm being a bit coy, Graham, is obviously some of these protests by nature, we want to be a surprise.
Of course.
That's it, nitty gritty. We don't want to show our hand. What I think it's important that we said in the statement, I think it is important to say this, is, quote, we also recognise and respect that every individual has the right to protest, but would urge all those who will no doubt exact that right to do so, exercise that right to do so in a safe and legal manner. You know, we're not telling people you can't do this, you do that. What we're just saying is we will not be organising a mass demonstration.
Okay.
We will stay within the confines of the law.
Okay, well that one's on ice then. But I think the main point to come out of that, of course, is you're essentially just backing up the statement that you've made, that plans are afoot for something in the future when it's safe to do so. So yes. I think that's a message that everyone will be interested in hearing. Anyway, I'm going to go around the rest of the guys, because as I said, they've been very patient this afternoon.
You're going to let them use all their frustrations up on me?
Absolutely. I'm going to throw you to the lions, as it were. I shall start with Rio. Rio, have you got a question you'd like to ask Paul about Hammers United, or just anything in general to do with West Ham?
Yeah, certainly. First of all, Paul, I applaud and appreciate your efforts so far with Hammers United.
Thank you.
We're behind you. We're behind you. Just like I asked, obviously in the last 24 hours, you must have seen a massive groundswell of support for yourselves.
Sure.
How have you and the committee been dealing with the inundated demand for your actions?
Okay. Well, I've been on the phone since 6 this morning. Seriously, what's happened is we've been getting a lot of membership requests per se before this happened. I was in the Isle of Wight on holiday last week, and my mate Lee Rogers, who's the joint secretary, phoned me to say, "Oh, you'll be pleased, Paul. We've just reached 14,000 members." That was a week ago. I think it's 14,700 now. He's had over 200 email requests for membership today, and we have other people joining on Facebook. So probably by the end of the week, we'd have hit 15,000. Lee, that's one of his main jobs, and he can't cope with it at the moment, because obviously what he does, he's putting all the email, he's putting them all on his new members. And what we have to watch is occasionally someone will ask for membership, and they'll already be a member on Facebook. And so then he'll have to email them and say, look, you can be a member either way, but can't be a member twice. So I think we've put on about 200 today. Yeah.
Thanks,
Okay.
Paul.
Good stuff. Thanks, Paul. Before I go on to Briz, I should point out that West Ham's game is turning into something of a capitulation now. Bournemouth have scored a fifth. It's
Christ.
West Ham United 2, Bournemouth 5. And throwing the glasses back on briefly, we still have another 21 minutes to play. So it's where do you go from here?
We made 4 or 5 subs just before the fifth. Even the guy with the caption's given up the ghost and didn't bother to tell us. I know Antonio and Bowen came off.
I saw Noble trudge off looking absolutely disconsolate. Yeah,
happy, did he? Yeah, so it looks like the coveted Betway trophy's going to the South Coast then.
Yeah, not looking so good. Noam, I'll come back to you in a second, buddy. But I'm just going to go over to Briz first of all. Briz, have you got a question you'd like to throw to Paul?
Yeah, I would. Firstly, Paul, really nice to meet you, and thank you for all the work that you're doing with Hammers United. As a fan of many, many years, it's great that someone's standing up for this club in the right way. Thank you for that, and I appreciate it. I'd like to ask you, I mean, what would you see as a step of, what victories can you see coming forward? Is it just about the removal of the board completely, or are there a number of small steps towards that? And if the board was to go, who would you want to see come in?
Okay. Well, obviously, our aim was always quite simple, to improve things for West Ham fans. And we saw the best way of achieving that was through dialogue. But after months and months and months of getting virtually nowhere, our members really turned. Our members became so pissed off that they demanded that we campaign for the owners to sell up. We do what our members say. However, I'm not going to hide behind that, because I totally agree with the members. So really, we're now campaigning on 2 fronts. We're campaigning to get the owners out, and our general campaign to improve things. Now, you all know about the official supporters board. I'm not going to tell you what you already know, but generally they're not well thought of. And their last meeting was on October the 8th, and the club disbanded it with a view to a third attempt at an official supporters board, which they claim would be democratic. And they started talks with the Football Supporters Association. And to be frank, we weren't too happy with that, because we're fully affiliated to the FSA, and we thought maybe they should be talking to us. And they have been absolutely fantastic. They are working their guts out with Hammers United, because we pointed out, look, if a supporters board is set up, it cannot be a club constraint. It has to come from the fans. And we have been working, mostly Tross and our legal team. And I always like to point out, I'm not going to name our legal team, but you probably know them. They are proper West Ham people that have travelled the country for donkey's years. So whilst they know their stuff and they're eminent solicitors, they're proper West Ham people. And over the summer, they've worked bloody hard. And it's not just Hammers United. Whilst we've been putting it together, we appreciate that this must involve all the affiliated supporters groups. So WHUISA have been involved, Bain, Pride of Irons, and they're almost there now with this final blueprint to present to the club. Now, what we've done at Hammers United, we've done our homework. We have contacted Mr. Howlett. We've contacted all the West Ham fan groups, all the ones I can think of anyway. And we've explained to them what we're doing, because it's no good. We're not doing this on behalf of Hammers United. It's for all West Ham fans. And I think we've got everyone on board. And so, yes, it would be great if we could have a fans group from the fans, representing the fans, in place for next season. And possibly, not possibly, long term for new owners, not just for the current owners, because when the new owners come in, it would be great if that was there, that body where we could have genuine dialogue. So it would be great to achieve that. But I have to be honest with you. Whilst Tross and I and the committee, they've worked so hard towards achieving this, it's very difficult because the members are saying Gold, Sullivan, Brady out. But we believe that things can be done in tandem. I don't think the club will take their ball away, because if I was the club, I would be looking, hopefully, attempting to build some bridges with the fan base. So get back to your question, mate. I'm sorry I've digressed. That would be a major achievement, and that would be great if we could achieve that. But at the moment, I have to say, the members seem, our members' main aim is Gold, Sullivan, Brady out. One thing that I don't agree with you, or agree is the wrong word, but one thing I don't believe is the supporters groups, Hammers United, WHUISA, or anybody else. I don't believe it's the supporters group's task to be looking for new owners. I believe it's for the present owners to put the club up for sale. I don't believe that's for the supporters to get involved with. I hope I've answered that. I've waffled on a bit, but I hope I've answered your question.
No, thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Breeze. Paul's answered your question there. I think that's everything covered.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah, good stuff. Thanks, Paul. No, let me come to you next. What have you got for Paul?
Yeah, hi, Paul, mate. Just to echo what everyone else has said, thanks for all the hard work. You say that obviously it's not for supporters groups to effectively replace the ownership, and it's obviously the owners need to be doing that. However, there was a famous statement from David Gold a while back that and I can't remember the exact percentage, but
85%.
Yeah, more aware than I. If that number of people were against against them owning, then he'd be off. So I mean, so do you not think there's something to be gained by trying to actually convey that's the case to him? That's sort of question one. Question two is, obviously you hear things as much, and there are always rumours flying around.
Yeah.
Have you got any feeling for whether or not there may be anybody actually in the wings, sort of ready to actually come in and make a bid if the club were up for sale?
Right, I am looking for something. Sorry, if you're finished, yeah?
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
Okay.
Right, I do
I'll take the second point. The second point first, because that's quick. I've no idea, mate. There are so many rumours flying around that one begins to think there's so many different people saying it that perhaps something is in the wind. You just bear with me. I just need to get something. It is relevant.
Yeah, sure.
While Paul's just dipping into his filing cabinet there, just a brief update from Stratford. It's still West Ham United 2, Bournemouth 5. 5-2. Absolute shocker.
We're going to win the league. We're going to win the league. And now you're going to believe us. And now you're going to believe us.
We might have to wait till next season and the championship, though, at this rate. But anyway, Paul's back with us now.
Okay,
so I shall go back to Paul.
I don't know if you can see this. Hold on. The figure is 85%.
Yeah.
Can you see this?
Not seeing it on my phone, but perhaps the other guys.
No,
probably not.
Come a bit closer, Paul. Come a bit closer. We can see that. I can see it.
86.
Wonderful. 88.
86 actually. No credit to me for that. A West Ham fan just got in touch and he said, the last time there were protests years ago, he got some badges made up. There's about 100 of them, and another one about GSB out. If anyone wants any of them, if they see me about, they can have one. But yeah, of course, we're on to that. We have been discussing with the FSA how they can help us there. And we'll be, let's just say we'll be talking to our members about that. I don't want to, go into it too much. But yes, of course, if it transpires, which it does seem apparent, that 85% do want the current owners out, I assure you
we've had a bit of a theme developing today, Paul, because we've said, and we're obviously all of us here are kind of on the same page. Where we'd like new owners, but there is a danger that perhaps we're all in this little bubble and we all think that that's the case, and maybe there is a sort of big percentage out there that we don't know about. But certainly, obviously, I'm not getting that from anywhere. And what we've said here is that if there is anyone thinks that the board should stay and the current owners should stay, we're always sort of very willing to sort of listen to that. Please come and tell us why. I can't think for the life of me why anybody would want to say that, but clearly, I mean, and I use the word only here, but if we're only on 88%, then what are those 12% seeing that?
Sure, I couldn't agree more. We're onto that. As I say, I don't want to, give too much away.
Yeah, sure. I mean, wouldn't want to.
We will be. I believe we'll be at a lot nearer to giving you an answer to that in a couple of weeks' time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Paul,
Excellent.
mate. Cheers again.
Excellent. Thanks, Noam. Thanks, Paul. Finally, from our panel, the Pink Palermo has been sitting there very patiently in the corner, looking a little bit stressed. I don't know if you've got the game on there, Pinky, but what have you got for Paul, buddy?
Yeah, just to say well done to Paul and all of them at Hammers United and at WHUISA as well, because it's an enormous amount of work that you guys are doing. I mean, setting up supporters associations and things like that is hard work. It's bloody hard work. It's unpaid work. It's selfless work in terms of you're doing things for other supporters, and hats off to all of you. The question I'd have for you, Paul, is how can you galvanise the broader media to keep running a story that has now been running for years now? Because we're almost at the point where West Ham United supporters want new owners is no longer news, because it's almost like the 8th anniversary where we want new owners kind of thing.
Yeah.
How can you keep the broad media engaged? We've seen the outrageous statements from Jim White this week about West Ham United supporters, and I don't want to give him any publicity, but how do we get legitimate mainstream media to actually dig in to our current owners and expose them for what they are? How can we do that?
Well, it's a good question. I don't think I've got the answer, to be quite frank. I have got a call on Monday with a newspaper. Andy Byrne spoke to a newspaper today. They're certainly keen to talk to us all the time, but I accept your point. They're interested at the moment because things are coming to a head. But how we sustain that, I've got to hold my hands up. I don't know the answer. And I think that's something that our committee really has to look at. Because as you say, if we do things the right way, that's not as much a story, is it? As if there's bloody running riots outside the bowl. But we will do things the right way. Having said that, some of our protests, I believe, will capture the imagination of the press. And obviously, we will do our utmost to get the press to be there when some of these protests take place. One of my favourite ones, which again, I'm not going to divulge, again, we just can't do it. We just can't do it. And it would have been bloody brilliant. But only an hour ago, Tross came up with an idea, actually, which is a good one. And I think these smaller protests will interest the press. I think they'll capture people's imaginations. And if you lads have got any ideas, either give us a ring. Can I just point this out, by the way, Graham? I think I'd like to. There was a line which we call an email address, protest@hammersunited.com.
Okay.
Anyone wants to email us any ideas. But yeah, I think that is one way we'll keep the press interested, because some of the things we've got in mind I think will capture their imagination. And one other thing, if I may say, I'm sorry I'm using your programme a bit here, Graham, but
no, sure, go ahead, my friend.
We need to be able to contact our members quickly, and we haven't got all their email addresses. So any of our members watching, please, if we've not got your email address, if you're not sure we have, please email us on protest@hammersunited.com, because we may have to react to things quickly. And, and we're talking maybe about getting half a dozen people here, half a dozen people there. But, we need to be able to contact people quickly. Thanks for that, Graham. I appreciate that. No,
very, very welcome, my friend. Thank you for sparing the time to come and talk to us this afternoon. It's always a pleasure to speak to you, and I can only echo what the other chaps have said here this afternoon about thanking you for everything you're doing for the fan base, the incredible amount of, as Pinky pointed out, unpaid work and often unrewarded work that you're doing on behalf.
I'll send you the invoice in a minute anyway.
Well, we of course have spoke about the personal costs, shall we say.
Yeah.
We adopt the same tactic as the club do with Eintracht Frankfurt when it comes to paying invoices.
Yeah, okay then, all right. Okay.
But I mean, we mentioned earlier, Paul, that it's taken an awful lot to unify this fan base again. After what's happened in recent years, it's been a big ask, but I think between you and probably without them realising it, the board, you've managed to do that. So more power to your elbow, more power to Hammers United's elbow, and of course Worcester too. And we look forward to seeing where this journey takes us. Of course, we are. We do point this out. We are all only here for the benefit of West Ham United. It's something that is very dear to all of us. I think all of us here have family that have been involved with the club for many generations, and it is very, very close to our hearts. That's why any of us are sort of involved. And
have I time to ask you a question, Graham?
Oh yeah, absolutely, mate. What can I answer?
Do you gentlemen feel like I do, that the point is now here? The end game is here. All or nothing. The way I do you feel? In the same way that I do. I really think the time has come now.
Well, let's see what the thing. Breeze, do you want to come back first on that one?
Yeah, I do. I was listening to the disgraceful comments of that kind of pain shop John Leslie, that is Jim White. Listening to his, bloke who can't board a plane without, falling over. And then listening to the way that he was talking about our support and thinking, actually, how wrong can you be? How wrong can you be? I actually feel that all the support now are of one mind, that, this board's got to go and we need to move forward. I think this is just now coming to a head, and I think we're in the end game territory. So I totally agree.
Rio?
Yeah, I mean, I've had two things happen this week, which has brought me to this conclusion. On a personal level, one of my best friends, who's been going regularly since the mid-'80s, has decided to jack it in. So I'm seeing one of my best friends every week, which has really gutted me. And last night's tweet by Mark Noble, I think, is the final turning point.
Yeah.
I think the coin has flipped.
Yeah.
And war has been declared.
I agree.
Thanks, Rio. No?
Thank you.
Yeah, it's we've been saying it for years that they're sort of running the club into the ground. Whether or not it's not, obviously the finances haven't been helped by COVID, but that's just brought things into sharp focus, where we're having to actually sell people and still not pay Eintracht Frankfurt, as we just mentioned. There's only one place where the buck has got to stop for that, and that's the owners. And if they're not running the club in a satisfactory manner, Mark Noble came up with that classic comment years ago. The club isn't being run by like a circus anymore, and that's always amazed me. That, because if you think of a travelling circus, you've got animals, you've got acts, caravans, and the logistics of getting that up and down the country. And they always turn up where they're supposed to be every day. I'd love it if our club will run that efficiently.
Yeah.
And no, I mean, the problem we've got is that, whereas in the past we could sort of do things like turning up at shareholders meeting because we all had our £10 share. They've got, the problem we've got is that it's their club. They do what they really well like with it, bad as that is. And, the more publicity we can get, the more uncomfortable we can make them feel in running this club into the ground, the better. This Gold has said, if 85% of people don't want me here, I'll go. Well, Mr. Gold, nothing personal, but, sell up, go and retire somewhere. You're not getting any younger.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're certainly not going to go if we just sit there and don't make it clear that they're not wanted.
No.
Okay.
So
thanks, Noam. Thank you for that. Pinky, I'm going to come to you just a second. Before I do, there has been another goal in Stratford. It's gone to West Ham, so it's 3-5 now. We're 5-3 down, and there's about 30 seconds of normal time to go. So it looks like we're losing the cup. Pinky, over to you.
Okay, I'll be brief because I've got a car waiting outside. Quite simply, I'm with Paul on this one. I think we are in the end game now. Frankly, I think Mr. Sullivan, Mr. Gold have run out of money. I think the fact that we're now selling players to just provide cash flow, for want of a better phrase, they did a rights issue, nearly enough that they raised at the time, but I think they put in all they had. And quite simply, they don't have enough money. They haven't got any friends at the club. Now even the players are rebelling against them. The game is up. They have to go, and they have to go now. And I'm afraid, gentlemen, that's my final word today. GSB out. Ta-ta.
Good man.
All right.
Pinky, thank you for joining us. I appreciate you've got to go. Also, Briz, I understand you've got to chip off. And Paul, we have had you for a lot longer than I'd
I'm very grateful anyway. Thank you.
As far as I'm concerned, I think I just agree with what everybody said. It does feel very much like a watershed moment. And for Mark to come out with that statement last night in the manner in which he did, as we've said, it's entirely unprecedented. And it's clearly, something that's been thought about. It's not just been done spontaneously on the spur of the moment. The fact that several squad members immediately jumped on it and supported what he had to say. Clearly, conversations have been held amongst the squad, and it certainly feels like there is something happening. So of course, time will tell. We shall see. But as I said, Paul, all power to your elbow. Thank you for everything you and the team are doing. We all appreciate how hard you're working. We know what you're doing behind the scenes.
Thanks very much for having me on. It is appreciated.
It is our pleasure as always, my friend, and no doubt we shall be in touch soon, hopefully with even better news in the very near future.
Maybe next time West Ham will win. Anyway, thank you very much.
Cheers, Paul. You take care.
Thanks, Graham. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, everyone. Bye.
That's Mr. Paul Colborn, the chairman of Hammers United, who has been working diligently on behalf of West Ham United fans for the last couple of years now to bring about a better solution for supporters. Pinky has left us, Briz has left us, and Paul has left us. We are down temporarily to a trio of myself, Noam, and Rio. That rhymes, doesn't it? That was pretty good off the cuff.
Don't give up the day job.
Before we introduce our next guest, who I'm hoping is going to join us very soon, and after which we're going to be wrapping up. Noam, do you want to give us a brief catch up on what's been happening down in Stratford in the second half?
Yeah, it's we've got 30 seconds of stoppage time left. It's we're 5-3 down. The fourth and fifth goals. The fourth goal came kind of as a. I think it was the fourth one, was despite Bournemouth trying hard not to score. The final whistle. Oh no, it's maybe offside. Sorry, it isn't the final whistle. The fifth. Sorry, the third goal was Bournemouth scored, which they tried hard not to score. Had easiest chances, hit the post, and it finally came out, and they put the ball away. Final whistle has gone now. Fourth goal, David Martin. I'm afraid ball went through his hands a little. Fifth goal was quite a good finish by Smith. Our third came from a corner, a rarity, an Anderson header, from the corner, which might give you some idea of what we were up against. It just shows that without Souček and Wright, we've got a midfield and a defence as porous as it ever has been. And well, strength in depth. Well, we ain't got it. Fabianski needs to be back from Poland. Souček, we might be missing for another week, subject to testing. Rice, well, don't get injured tonight, mate. is all I can say. They're just running through the goals now. Ben Johnson was just left totally exposed on the right-hand side. I don't think he was injured when he came off. I think that was definitely a tactical move because he was just having a complete shocker.
Yeah.
There. They're just showing our goals. Cullen putting a lovely cross for our second, but just watching
that final goal is horrendous, isn't it?
Yeah, they're walking through. He took it round Martin, still hit the post, had another shot blocked, and then they took it, played it back to the edge of the box, and finally they got fed up with messing about and scored.
Yeah, it's an absolute shocker. Rio, have you been party to any of this? Have you been able to see any of it?
No, I've been sad. Well, I don't want to say sadly. No, thankfully, I've not.
Absolutely, yeah.
What I've been doing, I've been just keeping an eye on the England game, which I completely forgot was on. And Declan started. It's about to. Team's just coming out now. But yeah, Declan starts in midfield for England, and as you say, Noam, please don't get injured,
mate.
Please don't get injured.
Yes, of course, with Souček potentially out for that Newcastle game, we could be starting with Noble and Wilshere in the opening game of the Premier League season next weekend. And so it's just been, we started this show. We were talking about West Ham United, a club in crisis. I think we've sort of pretty much examined all the avenues there with regards to Diangana and Noble's tweet. Of course, we've had some really valuable contributions so far from Paul Colborn from Hammers United and Sue from the West Ham United Independent Supporters Association. Rio, Paul spoke very, very for quite a long time. We were only supposed to have him for about 10 minutes, but he was kind enough to give us some more of his time. And what did you make of that? And what's your overall feeling, with regards to Hammers United and that whole process?
I'm very hopeful, to be honest. I mean, obviously, the legal requirements around COVID mean that we can't hold a protest of any kind which will jeopardise the public health. But he spoke of different aspects and different angles of approaching this particular subject and getting the point across. And I'm very interested, very hopeful. I know some of the guys there are working tirelessly to come up with fresh ideas, cope with the situation. And as I asked him, I expect there to be a groundswell of support today. And again, he proved it.
Yeah.
What he said about membership numbers, I think he said 14,000 initially before this week.
Yes, was it 14,000, and they're up to 14,700 now, 200 in the last 24 hours, which is pretty incredible, really.
But I think what speaks volumes is it's 14,000 after virtually 6 months of inactivity. And on the Greenway protest, I think the police estimates was 8,500 people.
That's right. Yeah.
So that is an incredibly higher turnout, percentage-wise, of people and members, and speaking with their feet, and making their voices heard, and that is a very impressive figure.
Yeah, very much so. Do you feel? We've obviously spoken quite a lot there about protests. Do you kind of feel that the board have used up their get out of jail card with coronavirus and the pandemic, and that effectively putting an end to those kind of visual protests for the time being?
Yeah, very much so. And I think their actions yesterday have just put another nail in their coffin, hopefully. They're slowly eroding any kind of goodwill they ever had which was hanging by a thread as it was.
Yeah.
And there's someone next in stage right with a massive pair of scissors. Going to snap that final thing that's hanging and keeping them there. As Paul said, the end game's afoot.
Yeah, it certainly is beginning to look a little bit like that. No, you know, Paul, of course, as we said, a good friend of the show, someone quite uniquely, I think, who has the ability to galvanise and unite the West Ham fan base. We've seen it so many factions in the last few years, and it's been fractured and split and gone in different directions. But Paul has probably managed to do, and of course, you know, with the help of a very determined and intelligent as well team, people like Tross, Andy Byrne, good, honest, hard-working, you know, traditional West Ham supporters. Of course, the WHUISA as well have done very well. Did you kind of get the impression, mate, perhaps a couple of years ago, did you sort of get the impression that all was lost with regards to that, and that, you know, it couldn't be that the fan base couldn't be united again? And do you, you know, how remarkable do you think the job is that Paul's done with Hammers United?
I mean, both the ISA and Paul have done a smashing job. I mean, the ISA have had its own internal problems, which, to be fair, haven't made things easy for them. But both groups and are kind of working together as well, as from what I can see. It's a hell of a job. One of the things I would say is that, in a way, the board have to a certain extent helped with recruitment, because, I mean, selling Diangana, so I'm just looking at Mark Noble holding his head in your photo behind you. Yeah. It's that one act. I mean, we're all cynical old so-and-sos here and all that, and every season we
Speak
get
for yourself, young man.
Okay, we're all cynical so-and-sos. I'm the cynical old one, but if you're going to be ageist on me, but the thing you've got, every season we get the season ticket renewal thing. We're all looking in anticipation for what new players we're going to get in, and we always end up sort of knowing that we're not going to get anybody that we've heard of in, despite being linked with somebody good. Yeah. But the sale of Diangana, I think, is more than anything else has helped with recruitment. And if Hammers United had wanted the board to do something to aid their cause, that was it. Mark Noble doubled things, I think. The board selling Diangana, all Hammers United have got to do is put up a sign saying, look, this is what we've got running the club. If you want to do something about this, join us. Mark Noble has just come out and said, almost said exactly the same thing. He said exactly what we're all thinking. We're all gutted. We're all, angry, as he put it. Yeah. And I mean, you and I both know that as a club captain, and we've met him on occasions, the pair of us, and we both remarked on the same thing. Where I think we presented him with a Player of the Year award all those years ago. Yep. And he came out with the sort of bog standard statements that clearly there'd been some sort of media training to a certain degree. You're a club captain, so people want to talk to you a lot. So make sure you say the right things while saying nothing. So we got the usual stock phrases about, this one means a lot because it comes from supporters and all that. It's all very nice and all that. So, but he's not someone who's just not had any media training. So if he's put the word angry in there,
that's a really good point.
He would have thought about that.
Yeah. Yes.
And so as I say, I wonder. I mean, obviously he'll be having a shower at the moment, but I wonder if anybody will want a quiet word with him from the upper echelons.
Yeah. It'd be interesting to see what develops there, won't it? Because I mean, I think Pinky alluded to that earlier, that it would be unusual for comments like that to go unpunished by a club. I guess it must be in.
I mean, going back to the year dot when not long after they joined, they got rid of Zola, and they tried to get rid of Zola for gross misconduct for making a public statement not too dissimilar to what Mark's come out with yesterday.
Yeah, another very good point.
They've got previous in dealing with this sort of stuff.
Yes,
but enough wayacking. I see we have a new guest who's probably more interesting than me waiting patiently.
We do. Looks like we've got another outside broadcast about to go. It is my absolute pleasure and delight to introduce to you yet another friend of KUMB's and a leading light in the organisation that is Hammers United. Some of you will know him as Stephen Cross. Those of us on KUMB and on web forums will know him as Tross as well. Either way, as I say, he is one of the leading lights of Hammers United, been working diligently and very, very hard with Paul and Andy and the rest of the team behind the scenes. How you doing, Tross? Good to see you, buddy.
Yeah, great to see you, mate. As always, thanks very much for the invite, Graham. And apologies for the outdoor broadcast, but you know the way that things have been going over the last few weeks, I've been up to my neck in work, up to my other neck in Hammers United stuff, and working with West Ham and trying to do what we do, trying to improve things for all fans. And at the same time, the Trossette, as it were. She's kind of putting her foot down. I start trying to trim some of these apple trees and build the summer house that I was supposed to do over the summer and put up the deck I was supposed to do and all these other things that we don't get around to. So,
how's the garden looking, buddy? How's it looking? You got it how you wanted, or is there still plenty of work to do?
Well, the garden, well, you can see, mate.
Look at that! Look at that! That's not East London, is it?
Needs a bit of work, mate. Needs a bit of work. Like I always say, the garden's not looking too bad, but the orchard, mate, the orchard needs some work.
It's looking absolutely fabulous. And
don't you hate it when that happens?
Yes. It's a killer, mate. He's come a long way from shifting papers outside a bookstall at Upton Park Station, mate. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I know where to come to should I need any tips for trimming those herbaceous borders. Anyway, so keep up the good work there, buddy. Hammers United. Of course, the reason you are here is to discuss Hammers United, and of course, it's also sort of backwards. He's there. He's kind of behind me. We're talking. We've been talking this afternoon about this guy, the club captain, Mark Noble, and I keep using the word, but it absolutely was an extraordinary missive that he put out last night via his Twitter feed. I've asked everyone this same question, so I'll come to you first of all with this one. What was your instant reaction when you read that from Mark?
I was actually really pleased, mate. I think it was long overdue that our town, he remembered where he was from.
Yes, of course, a Canning town boy, Mark, of long ago, of long standing. But it was just, I think we were all a bit thrown by it, weren't we?
Well, I think it's no doubt. I think we were all shocked. I think we all saw it as being a massive surprise. I think if we look across the global game, those kind of statements normally they come from where they're not as uncommon in the European game. Sometimes with a lot of the Italian clubs or some of the Spanish clubs, you'll see some of the captains speak out and they'll talk in and around some of the issues and the challenges. But that's actually normally in line with where the board are looking to go and challenges against management regimes. Very unusual for a skipper to look to go directly and publicly against the board. And I think the other thing that you could say from that, mate, was the rallying round of other people in the squad for his statement. Clearly shows that the team itself are incredibly disappointed, and you have to ask yourself the impact that will make on morale. And I suppose the question that everybody else is asking, I don't know if anyone's got an answer from it yet, because I've been kind of stacked and manic after late last night and then early today, and a bit of coaching out on the grass myself this morning, with where David Moyes sits in all of this, Graham. And very much.
Yeah, good question.
If he was sanctioning everything we were led to believe from the conversations that he had, he saw Grady as being part of his team, and I saw Grady coming up as a kid. I've watched him quite a few times. I've seen him play. I always thought the boy had real potential. I think when he came into the first team initially, it was a tough time, and maybe he was pushed in a bit early. But if anybody saw any of the games that he played last season for West Brom, he's developed incredibly, and I think Slav had done wonders with him there. And I think from our perspective, it seemed to me, you know, that as a youth player, it was almost reminding me of when Defoe went out to Bournemouth, and you remember, you know, he went there a boy and he came back a man, and I think that's where we were with Grady. So hugely disappointed. And,
that's a really good parallel to make there. I mean, of course, we remember Jermaine. I think it was 12 consecutive games, was it not, that he scored for the Cherries and broke the league record of about 70 years standing when he did that. You touched on David Moyes there, Tross. He went to great lengths a few weeks ago to talk about the Red Bull model, which, as for those who aren't, you know, aware, it is very much with regards to taking in young players, developing those players, making out on the valuable assets. Now, Grady Diangana is probably the perfect example of someone in that particular model. Yet here we are, a matter of weeks later, a couple of days, let's not forget, after the club were putting out memes and tweets with Grady on, talking about the new season. What do you think is going on with Moyes? Do you think he's sort of accepted that in order to raise funds to improve the defence, this was a necessity? Or do you think that the board have just rode roughshod over his sort of wishes and ambitions? What do you make of it?
So it's an interesting question, and perhaps we can touch on David Moyes, but I think there are other characters in that particular sketch, mate. I think. Let's be honest, David Moyes, when he came to us beforehand, he did a job, and despite whether you liked him, his brand of football, the reputation, the failures, the successes, everything, he came in beforehand, he did a job. He was shown the door by the board. Pellegrini was brought in, money was spent, extortionate amounts of money, bringing in a number of people who were unproven, and those decisions were made at board level. That didn't work. It was a failure. They've gone back to David Moyes. If I was David Moyes, I'd have seen that as a great opportunity, because pretty much after the West Ham gig, where was his reputation? And I'm speaking openly, and I think fairly to the man. Where was his reputation when he'd gone from being somebody that had a series of failures to somebody that could save a club from relegation and get it out of trouble, almost in the Allardyce-esque type of mode, And then to get a second bite at the cherry, I think it was a very... either a very brave or a very desperate man, or perhaps someone with a point to prove, or somebody who was thinking, well, it's last chance saloon. And let's be realistic, football managers may not be paid the huge amounts of money that professional footballers are, but it's not a bad gig, right? And the money's good. And for David Moyes, I think it was a good offer, a good opportunity, and a good gig to come into the club. Then to be in the position where he's got that offer and he's got that gig, and
we have just lost Tross.
What does he do? He's got a number of... There you go. Sorry, guys.
No, so carry on. We just lost you for a brief moment there, but we've got you back now. So please carry on.
So I think he's in the position where he's got a number of he's got a number of decisions to make, isn't he? He knows that he would have known when he came in, given the circumstances at the club, that all the money that should have been invested wisely in the squad, in the team, in the club, in the broader infrastructure, etc., well, pretty much has been squandered, right? And I think that's very fair to say. He's got an awful lot of players that have under-delivered on very high salaries. He would have to make decisions whether or not he's going to persevere with them. If he thinks he can bring something out and will change their game or move them on to look to create funds. But I would have expected that one of the things that he would have been happy about, given particularly, remember, he would have seen Grady beforehand when he was here, right?
Yeah, of course.
And one of the things that he would have been happy about, and given the line of his conversation, was that we could bring on the youth. And yet we're in a position, that now we've lost not just Grady, but we've lost Ngakia as well. Let's not forget. So 2 youth players going towards that kind of Red Bull model. And let's be honest, in modern football, I think after looking at his displays last season, you could say it'd have been perfect for the Red Bull model, wouldn't you? Grady Diangana. In fact, you could say Diangana in your team gives you width and gives you wings. Quite literally. Sorry about that, but yeah, I really do. So I look at it through a Moyes lens, And I'm like, would he have wanted Diangana in his team? Well, I can't think why he wouldn't have done. The club was already looking to move. We hear looking to move Anderson on to Arsenal. We understand there was dialogue there.
Yep.
Is it because they couldn't move Anderson on to Arsenal? Is it because that fell through that we realised we need to pull money in? I think what's clear, given new shirt sales went on sale and then there was a 10% discount and a 20% discount, and now the way that we went about season tickets and the need it would seem to pull money into the club, despite the fact that we only pay $2 million a year rent in our stadium, it would appear to me that we've got some financial challenges. And as such, what David Moyes may have thought, where he may have had to shift some players on to free up some budget, I don't think he would have thought that he'd have had to start losing some of his youth players to be able to do that. And we know that there was 30 million raised over the 30 million raised by investors internally. What's happened to that? Where that's gone, I'm not sure. We know that 18.7 million has been paid to the investors at board level, on the loans that have been taken. So monetarily, and where that sits, Graham, I think Moyes would have thought, well, I knew I didn't have much, but I didn't realise that I'd start losing. You couldn't. It'd be very unfair to call Grady one of the crown jewels at the club. But I definitely think he had the potential, and I think everybody that worked with him, like we know some guys that were quite involved in coaching him beforehand, and everybody tipped the boy big. Everybody.
And isn't that the big issue, though? I think it's not because of his current ability. It's the fact that this is West Ham. This is a club that nurtures and promotes from within traditionally. That's the club's ethos. That's one of the things that we hold as supporters. We hold dear. As one of the key tenets, really, of being a fan of this club. And
is it not? Are we not? Do we not? Even though they all went on to other clubs, they went on to the Chelseas and the Man Uniteds. Do we not still hold the Carricks, the Coles, the Ferdinands? The Lampards, even despite all the controversy. Are we not still proud of that because of our academy?
Absolutely, we are.
And even now, if we talk in and around Declan Rice, I think we've got to be open and honest, right? If I was Declan Rice and I'd come through at West Ham and I'd got to where I'd got to, and I'm playing at the club, I feel I owe the club a certain amount? Yeah, I probably do. But I also think that I've worked quite hard on not necessarily the biggest salary in the world for an extended period of time, and I've delivered my side of the bargain. And if I look around and see my peers being sold, and with the greatest respect, and I've actually been to West Brom with West Brom fans. One of my closest mates is actually a West Brom fan, and I've been there beforehand. And do you know what? They're not a bad bunch of people. They're like a good match day, good working class types, and they like their football up there, But if you're losing players to Man United or Chelsea, you can almost understand it.
Yes.
You can almost understand it.
Yeah.
You're losing clubs to West Brom, losing players to West Brom.
Yeah.
Well, it's a bit of a question, isn't it? It's a bit like we don't seem to be able to buy players or win players at the minute from the likes of Nottingham Forest, and we're losing our players to West Brom, and it makes you ask questions when you look at teams that are coming up and spending the money that they're spending. It's where are we going to be? And don't get me wrong, I'm all for the model, right? And I'd love us to drive towards not necessarily a Red Bull model in regards to the commercial aspects of that and what that's become, because if you do anything with their German counterparts, you realise that they're not necessarily a very well loved club. But if you look at the model of building out the youth and growing youth and bringing through good solid youth players, well, I think that's great. I think that's wonderful, and I'd love us to be doing that. But we're not doing that. So if we're not bringing through our best youth players, and if we're selling them the way that we're selling Grady, almost overnight decision, as you said, I had a conversation with somebody at the club talking about the picture between Jared Bowen and Grady when I was talking to somebody in the week, and I was like, well, how can it be this on one day and that on the other day? Does the left hand really not know what the right hand's doing at this place? What's going on? So it's frustrating, mate. I think it's really, really frustrating. Then when you look in and around how that situation's come about, that's really when I think some of the other characters start coming into the sketch, isn't it? Because you can't blame David Moyes for selling Grady Diangana full stop. Even if David Moyes has been told, well, look, you know you've got holes at the back, you need to sell someone to raise funds to do it, and you need to sell somebody. And he goes, well, okay, I'll sell Grady Diangana because that's a calculated decision I've made. I still don't blame David Moyes for having to make that decision.
No,
I blame the people who have put him in that position to make that decision, right?
Sure.
And that's where my challenge is at the minute. And you know, I was in conversation yesterday, and I highlighted then. You know, I think as a club and where we are with the decisions that have been made in and around money and transfer policies and the money that's been spent and the debt that isn't reducing and the interest that continues to be paid. You know, well where does that responsibility start and stop? Because, you know, I look back and, as you know, do a fair bit of homework, and I go back over a lot of the promises that were made. And, you know, I look at David Gold in particular, right? And I think David Gold, anybody would say that David Gold wasn't West Ham, really, had struggled. You know, he was desperate to play for the club as a young man. Yep. You know, always had association, lived across the road, etc. And maybe I believe it. I'm not naive enough to think that he's not in it for the money. He's a businessman, of course he is. He's not going to do anything not for the money. You know, he's going to look to lose money around it. And I think it was a calculated risk for them when they looked to get involved at West Ham. But I think whatever his dream was and whatever promises that he looked to make and his vision of whatever could become West Ham at Stratford and the Millennium Stadium, this certainly can't be it. And, you know, I look at as to where we are, and we see Karen Brady running what you'd call the operational side of the business and the day-to-day, and the top-end negotiations and business decisions, I'm guessing, are being made by David Sullivan.
Yeah.
But I look at the collective of the board, and how much further on are we really? You know, to me, well, wasn't last season a relegation scrap? When you have a relegation scrap, isn't the way around that? I have to think, okay, well, what do we do? You know, we'll go again with the same squad that we had last year because we think we've got some good players. Well, let's be realistic. You know, I've got all the love in the world for Antonio. I think he typifies everything great about work ethic in a professional footballer and what you can achieve. You know, but we also know that Mikel's a big lad. You know, and because of the way he plays the game, he bursts in the sprint and he's prone to injury. Right, and we know that Haller last year was also prone to injury. You know, so your strikers, for two strikers at the top, from when we sold strikers beforehand and we bought in a Jetty who's now gone as well, we're in trouble, aren't we? You know,
we are. But are you perhaps not making a case there for the sale of Diangana by saying, look, we've got a plethora of options on those wide positions, you know, Snodgrass, Fornells, Anderson, Bowen, and so on and so forth. Playing devil's advocate, is that not a wise decision by the club or whoever's behind that to say, look, we accept something's got to give. We've tried to sell Lanzini. We've tried to offload Anderson. We haven't been able to do that. So the next option is to look at a player who isn't necessarily going to get a lot of first team action this season and secure some funds that way.
So, but potentially, but then I suppose if you look at the overall squad and you look where you need strengthening, I don't think could anyone realistically say over the last season and a half, because I'll give to Felipe Anderson that 18 months ago, you know, he came off the back end of what was a good first half of the season. Yeah. Right. But since then, I also think it's fair to say that he is serially under-delivered and underperformed. And I think Fornells, I think, is a great footballer, and I think is improving all the time at West Ham. I like the way he plays, but he's certainly not a pacey winger, is he? You know, and Jared Bowen is left-footed but plays on the right, and Antonio is right-footed and plays on the right, but we've moved him into becoming a striker. So the only other option I actually see there has been De Silva, who's had a really, really rough time medically. So I'd say that that's actually an area that you'd want to strengthen, not further weaken. And if you've got a resource in a business that you can apply to an area where you're weak, you don't think, well, okay, well, I'm weak here and I'm weak there, so I'll make this area weaker to maybe look to go and make that one stronger. It's as though we're a bucket full of holes, mate. You know, how many fingers and thumbs do we have to stop the leaks?
Yeah, that's a very, very good answer, actually. Thank you. I'm also quite aware of the fact that we've got Noman Rio sitting patiently with us, waiting to get involved again. So I'm going to come to them in a moment to throw a question or two in your direction. Before I do that, want to get back to Hammers United briefly.
Yeah, sure.
Now, Paul came on earlier and spoke very eloquently and at length about the protest situation. We know where you are as an organisation with that. One thing we didn't really get the opportunity to touch upon, however, was we mentioned it, but we didn't sort of go in depth with regards to the SAB, the Supporters Advisory Board, version 3, which, as I'm sure anyone who's been following your progress in recent weeks and months will know, you've been very, very close to and at the heart of trying to get a fully independent supporters board that isn't, a construct.
Yeah, it's a great question, mate, and I'm actually really glad you've asked it, because I think sometimes with all the furore of everything else that's going on, that one kind of falls off the agenda, and it shouldn't.
Okay.
Because
so fill us in. Where are we with that, Tross, right now? What's your
so
position?
we've got a further meeting next week with the club. But one thing I have to say, because I think there's been a lot of, as you would have heard yourself, there was a leak, and somebody decided it would be wise to go public and talk in and around some of the documentation that was shared. Documentation that was shared was actually already out of date. Mm-hmm. But what's very important here, and I suppose two things really. Firstly and personally, I love the fact that West Ham is a club that we can have independent bodies across our support, independent media that cater to all opinions, and I'm a great fan of that. What I'm really not a fan of is self-publicists, and people that are kind of like in those really low down depths of the pond, and they're pond feeders, and it's all about the self. It shouldn't be about the self. And the reason I love the committee at Hammers United is we're all just regular guys, full-time jobs. This is, we work, we give up our time to do what we do. And we do that for the benefit and the good of all fans. And we see that as a great privilege for all to be able to serve fellow West Ham fans, and I think some people perhaps need to take a good, long, hard look in the mirror and realise that they should have loyalty to their fans, their fan base and their team when these sort of issues are discussed. The reason they're sensitive and they're confidential is because that's important for the end state. The other thing that I'd like to say is that this certainly won't be an OSB Mark II or an SAB Mark III. The driving factors and forces in behind this, the club, I think, were initially involved in what was looking to be built out here. And after a long period of time and a lot of hard work that's gone on behind the scenes with us, and we've pushed forward with some of our legal guys and what they've driven through, and we've worked, I've spoken to yourself and a number of other people across the independent support about what we're looking to achieve. Mm-hmm. We've worked with Sue and WHUISA and Kev and the guys there. And what we want is we want to build an independent supporters board. And that's very, very important for people to understand, because I don't want a supporters board that has, for argument's sake, a West Ham board member sitting as its vice chairman like previous constructs have done. This has to be a supporters board for West Ham fans. This has to be our table. It has to be our church. And I want to emulate some of the other groups. And one of the great things about being an FSA member is that you can go around and speak to the other club in supporter groups. And we've learned so much over the last 18 months of our existence. And we've looked at what's worked for them and what hasn't. And one of the great things about learning from other people's history is you don't have to repeat their mistakes, Graham, right? So what we're looking to create here is a supporters board for the fans, by the fans. And it's our supporters board, so that we're in the position to start tabling some of the questions to the club that previous incarnations haven't had the opportunity to do. I wouldn't want this independent supporters board to be in a position whereby it would be circumvented in and around things like season ticket prices, which are quite important, and the like, as one example. So, and I happen to believe, and obviously, I'm very keen to be able to demonstrate the right levels of trust, and that we don't breach confidentiality. So I won't go into the detail, but rest assured, parties at the club are very keen to see this stood up and for it to be by the fans, for the fans, And I'm not sure that in the current climate, it's particularly palatable to those at board level, because obviously there is a number of challenges across the support at the moment with regard to the current ownership and where that sits. However, the independent supporters board will be a construct that will outlive this board, probably the board after it, etc. We want to leave a legacy for West Ham fans, so they've got something to go back to, a go-to base, if you like, for dialogue with the club moving forward, whichever set of owners there are. In my lifetime, blimey, I used to walk past Pratt's Woodyard when I was a kid and get me bun on the way to school from Stetchell's Bakers on Plashet Grove, mate, right? So I've seen the Pratts and the Kearnseys. I've seen the Brown era. I've seen the billionaire bankers that went bust only at West Ham, right? And we've seen Gold, Sullivna and Brady come along with a consortium where they made, they sold us fairy dust and they're yet to deliver the Disney fairy tale. So, I'm very keen to make sure that people understand that independent supporters board is that, and it's for the good of all fans across the board. And we want to do something and achieve something that works, where we can get engagement and interaction with the club at a whole new level for the benefit of all fans. And actually, I also believe for the club, because I'd be as brazen and go as far to say that if the club had perhaps put an organisation like an independent supporters board in place 10 years ago and worked with it positively, transparently, and collectively together, they'd have probably had a successful transition over to the Olympic Stadium instead of the failed one that we currently have. A lot of the issues that we find at the moment where, and I keep harping back to it, despite people at the club, when I remind them of it, rolling their eyes. The last home game we had, we took 8,500 fans virtually to the edge of the stadium, in protest because they're not happy about their current experience. I think it's only right that we have an independent supporters board so that the fans can, between themselves, can figure out and talk the way they want to talk and present what they want to present back to the club and ask those questions, because there's a massive disconnect at the moment between club
there is, isn't there? And see, I think one of the key issues I've always had with the board is that it always appears to be so unnecessary. It didn't have to be this way, did it? It's just kind of the result of the stubborn attitudes of one or two prominent people at the club. We all know who we're talking about. We don't need to.
I think you're right, mate. I think it's very difficult. And from my perspective, obviously being the joint secretary at Hammers United, I'm accountable to our members. And I give them back where they are. But I'm a great fan, as you know, of the film Gladiator. And I look at that. I look at that saying, Rome is the mob and the mob is Rome, right? And nobody wants Rome burnt to the ground by the mob, But that situation only created itself because Caesar and co didn't really play the game, did they? Right? So if there had been more game playing over a period of time, this would be a redeemable situation. It'd be more of a turnaround in relationship stakes. But what I continually keep falling back on, I'm sorry to drone on, I know other guys have got questions. I'm probably quite apt when I'm sitting here with the sun burning into my eyes through my glasses. But it's a complete lack of vision. And I think the last vision, the last statement, the last story was that 10-point plan from over a decade ago. And that's not there anymore, is it? We're 10 years on. I was talking yesterday, and, my little girl was a babe in arms. She started secondary school 2 days ago. 10 years on, where's the vision? Where's the story? What can we buy into? What can we believe in? Who are we? What's our identity? Where are you taking us? What are you doing with us? And nobody answers those questions. And I think, as you rightly say, the constant triage, the retrofitting, now let's do this, the whole of it being so unnecessary, such a waste of energy. There are, and and I'm sure there'll be people amongst my membership will go like, easy, Tross. It's like, there are actually some really good people at the club, right? Who really want change and they want to do things differently. But I also believe that there's a glass ceiling at the club, and when things hit that glass ceiling, it goes no further, mate.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you're absolutely right. It certainly seems that way, and I think that's what we've become accustomed to in recent years. I'm keen to bring Noam and Rio in, who have been incredibly patient while you and I have sorted the board out anyway and talks about Hammers United. Noam, let me come to you first, buddy. What
just been keeping half an eye on Declan Rice, actually.
Let's have an update. How's he getting on?
Half an hour in, he's not injured. He did miss a sitter from about 5-6 yard out. Okay. Took a swing at the ball and it hit his standing leg, much to everyone's embarrassment.
Okay.
0-0, by the way. So,
I guess we're all right now, given what's happened in the last 72 hours and what we saw happen in Stratford this afternoon against Bournemouth. We'd all be quite happy with the simple fact that Declan Rice still has two working legs and that he's still standing. So anyway, your question for Tross, please, Noam.
You kind of actually sort of touched on this, and part of the way through what you were saying a few minutes ago, then you kind of almost answered it at the end, which is a bit annoying. So don't do it again. But I was going to say,
I bow down name in the presence of KUMB royalty. You and the boss.
Right, yeah, right, yeah. Yeah, I'll take that as the insult it probably was. But anyway, mate. No, but what I was going to say was, you say that, obviously at the levels you're dealing with within the club, and you say that you're encountering a real desire for change. How optimistic are you that when we get the blueprint, if you like, for the I don't know what to call it, because I don't want to call it any of the things it's been called in the past and taint it, but the new independent supporters board.
Let's go with ISB, shall we?
ISB, yeah.
Nice to meet you.
I don't want to taint it from past stuff. But so, how confident are you that? Firstly, how confident are you that, despite all the enthusiasm from within the club at the moment, it's going to get past then what matters? And secondly, you mentioned that you've had talks with other club supporters through the FSA, and is there a sort of an ideal blueprint, if you like, for something that you've seen that you take and think, yeah, we'll have that and tweak that? Which club are we talking about? Just out of interest.
Yeah, good questions. Good questions. So I can't go into the details of the club because I'm confidentiality bound. But
sure, yeah.
I think I'll answer the second one first. There have been some blueprints that have been put together, and a few that have been shared with me and some of the other guys in and around those conversations. And there's some cookie cuttering in and around the basics, but I think you've got to look at each circumstance. I think if this goes right, it could be a blueprint, right? This could be a blueprint. It could be a great blueprint for all supporters groups, because it would mean that very much the group is based on an independent level, based in and around its own support, right? But I think one of the challenges that we have to recognise, and we do have to recognise it, and it's that not many clubs have got the complexities that West Ham have got, mate. I think, you could go across football and everybody hates the board. Everyone wants a new player. Why are we not signing Lionel Messi and sticking that Ronaldo kid out on the left? It's we're football fans. We always want a bit more. But our board are quite unique in their approach. And the manner in which they operate, the levels of engagement that they have. When I talk to other clubs, like if you want a great relationship, look at the way that Man City put their arms around their supporters board. Fantastic example. And I know people might go, "Oh yeah, but look at all the money." Well, forget about the money for a minute. The guys pretty much let the supporters board do what they want and come to them, and then they engage and then they talk through the issues. That's the way it should be. Particularly if you look at it then through a West Ham lens, didn't the statement say, we're custodians of the club, you're the owners of it? So if we're truly the owners of the club, and that wasn't a lie, and that's what people genuinely believe, they genuinely do believe that supporters should be able to run this. And, there's a school of thought that suggests that the club kind of filled a power vacuum and, at a time when the West Ham fan base couldn't get itself together in that regard. A few years back, it was very, very choppy water for us, I think, as a support. We've ironed a lot of those creases out now, I think, amongst ourselves. And we're in the position where we'd like to take control back of supporter engagement because we're the supporters, And I think if we look at some of the clubs that have really good relationships and listen to their supporters groups, and there's power in their supporters groups, City's a great one. I think everybody's seen demonstrably what the guys at Spirit of Shankly do and how they work. I've had conversations with people from the Northampton Imps, mate, and they talk about the engagement that they have with their club at their level. Obviously very different because they're smaller, but there's great examples I feel that the club could learn from if they actually looked at what good looks like for supporter satisfaction. And that opens a much bigger box for me, actually, when you look at the actual satisfaction of fans at West Ham at the moment. If this was any other business in the world, you'd go to your CSAT scores across your customers and see how happy they are with the way things are going. And if they weren't any good, heads would roll, right? Whereas in football and West Ham, unfortunately, we're not going to, we're not. Well, I said we don't like the white shirt from TM Lewins. We're going to go and buy the blue shirt from Charles DeWitt. Well, that doesn't happen in football, does it? You've got your colours, you've got your shirt, you've got your club. That's it. Oh, I don't like the DeWalt drill. I'm going to buy a Makita one. Well, no, sorry, mate. You're a West Ham fan. That's who you are. That's where you are. You can't change it. And that, unfortunately, is traded on enormously. That emotional relationship is traded on enormously by our board, and our loyalty, I believe, is not just taken for granted. It's actively used as a springboard,
exploited,
and absolutely, mate. Then it's exploited, and then other avenues have broken out. Another one that I've been scratching my head on, slight sideline, is that we go from the bowling, and as painful as it was, I'm not going to go down that road. We go from the bowling, we go to the Olympic Stadium. We've got an additional capacity. We end up with a waiting list of some 50,000 people. I'm always told about waiting to jump in and fill the gaps, etc. And yet commitments are made by our chair. We're going to bring new people into football. We're going to open football up for new people. I'm like, well, hold on, mate. You've got a waiting list of 50,000 fans who couldn't get into the old stadium. They've had long-standing association. Where's the loyalty? Where does time served come in for anything at West Ham? And when people leave, when season ticket holders are at the point where they're like, I've just had enough. I don't like the new move. I don't like the stadium. I'm not enjoying it anymore. It's not gone. Where's the retention team at West Ham? Every other big retention teams in big business. You go across the banks, insurers, anything. I cancel my subscription to one of the Baltics. I won't tell you which one. You might get my politics. But I cancelled my subscription to one of the Baltics. They hounded me, mate. I felt like a fox on a country chase for 2 weeks. Why are you leaving? I only paid them £7 a bloody month, right? You walk away from West Ham, your season ticket, you could have been there for 30 years. Your dad could have been there for 30 years beforehand. You walk out. Well, what's the follow-up? What's the play? What's the plan? We'll come back. We want you back. This is what we're going to do to bring you back. There's none of that, mate. And why is that? Well, because from an operational perspective, there's a 50,000 waiting list and there's a commercial deal. We don't need your money, so we don't care enough. And CSCAT scores don't cut it in this business, and we don't really care about your satisfaction. Well, that's how it seems to me.
Yeah, it's sort of cutting in there, Tross and Noam. I recall prior to moving to Stratford, when we were discussing this with the club and in terms of who would be given priority over seating, etc. The records they held only went back a few years. I can't remember specifically. I think it was 8 years. Was as far back as the records went with regards to who had held season tickets, which just seemed kind of ludicrous that, you had guys there that had season tickets 20, 30, 40 years, and yet the records, there was no recognition of that. It just seemed kind of, sort of madness, really. And that's perhaps where the problem started in a sense with that, in terms of people being dissatisfied with where they ended up, But thanks for the answer there, Tross. Very, very in-depth. But from Noam. Let's go on to Rio now. Rio, what have you got for Tross, buddy?
Basically, he's covered it. Well, I will go on.
I told you not to do that again.
And then you nicked the one, mate. You nicked it. You nicked my second question. Books and all. Again, thanks for all the work you're doing. Very much appreciated from the fan base. And it really relates to this, is that going forwards, given the time constraints and the current climate, how do you see the impact on the board members, and will it affect those in charge of Hammers United going forward and trying to implement these changes with the club?
Yeah, it's a great question, Rio. And there's some real challenges, right? We are currently living in extremely unique circumstances, right? It's a very different world to one that we've ever known, and probably once this pandemic passes that we'll ever know again, or at least I hope so. And that means there's a whole host of legislation that's come down. And if we look at it through a Hammers United lens and to our members, our members are going potty at the minute. People really want to protest. Everyone's feelings running high. Everyone's furious about the Grady piece, and there's still no progress. And this is all off the back of where we were back in February. It's frustrating. We're going into a new season. And we play today against Bournemouth, and I know it's only a friendly. And I coach kids football. I tell my kids that friendly results are not important. It's all about the fitness, But to go down at home 5-3 to Bournemouth pre-season, knacker players, their heads down. Mark Noble coming out with a statement. Are we on the verge of crisis? Are we in crisis? I don't know. but the fans are so frustrated, you know. And currently, if one thing I'm certain of, mate, is if we weren't in these circumstances, there'd be protest.
Yeah.
I also know that given the current circumstances, and I've spent far too many hours engaged with the legal guys who are much smarter than me, mate. And you know, we've exhausted many an opportunity, and I know that the only way that you can currently protest in groups over 30 is by submitting a risk assessment to the local council with a statement that covers your political goals, ideas, and aims, and they have to give you some kind of indemnity type certificate and approve you as a political organisation. Tick off your risk assessment, then you can march. We're not a political group, mate. You know, we're football fans that want better for our club. And the end result of that is you don't play ball, the organisers will end up facing £10,000 fines. And if you look at all the chaps that got nicked at the weekend doing their climate stuff for Extinction Rebellion, you know, they'll face personal fines between £100 and £1,000. So not really ideal for a climate that you want to be able to protest in. However, you know, that's mass protest, and there are still opportunities to protest against what's happening and help those fans maybe get some symbolism, if you like, that, you know, protest continues, and once this environment changes, we can get back to mass protest. You know, there was a statement that was released earlier this morning on Hammers United, if anybody hasn't read it yet, that talks in and around the detail of that. And I think for us, I suppose, personally, and where we're going and what we're looking to do, you know, I think that over an extended period of time, it's 18 months now, it seems to have flown by, you know, but I think we've earned the right, I suppose, to the trust of our members. We're actively growing our membership, which I think is always a good sign, hugely after the impacts of the last couple of days. And, you know, we're keen to make sure. One of my frustrations is, you know, through a certain lens, you could say, well, isn't it great for the board at the minute? You know, you've got no environment for football. There's no fans at football, and when they're coming back, those circumstances are going to be hugely controlled. Not controlled, and I must say this, not controlled by the club. Government legislation that the club and the stadium and everybody else have to interpret to put in place to keep us all safe. Very important distinction. But for us at the moment, to protest in those circumstances is navigating some very, very choppy water, you know, but I have every confidence. You know, I've got a great team around me. We've got a great think tank. We've got some really, really good sponsors in the background as well. And we're looking to, we're looking to make sure that the watching world can see that West Ham fans are still not happy. And I think that's what our members' expectation is of us. And that's what we'll look to deliver. Does that answer the question, Ria?
Yeah, it is.
Lovely. Thanks, Tross.
Pleasure, guys.
It's been a pleasure as always. Listening to, you know, your comments and your enthusiasm, which I think always comes through whenever, you know, we get to chat. Your love for West Ham United, the club, is apparent. It's very, very clear. And as the guys have already said there, you know, we on behalf of everyone really appreciate what you, Paul, Andy, all the guys in the background are doing for the fan base.
Thank you, mate. Thank you.
It's been a struggle. We know how hard you've worked, and also the personal toll as well. It takes having to put so much time into it, but it is, you know, it is.
Well, my long flowing hair, Graham's no longer with me. So over the last 18 months, and
you and me too,
worse,
brother.
Though, it could be worse if you weren't doing all that. You'd have to be working on the orchard.
Oh, mate, you know, they should have me picking apples and making cider, which maybe wouldn't be a bad thing. But no, on a serious note, guys, I thank you all for that, and I'll say again what I always say in this circumstance. You know, I think for me, and I know I speak for my committee, you know, we see it as a great privilege to be able to serve our fellow fans. We really do, and you know, we feel it's work that needs to be done, and we're pleased and proud to be able to give up our time and find it to do it and help. We are always looking for help, and we're always looking to extend and grow our membership. So if you haven't already and you're watching this and you don't know who we are, www.hammersunited.com, get on there, make yourself a member. We'd love your support, and any help you think you could give us from a committee operational expertise perspective, please reach out.
There is. You've stolen my thunder, actually, Tross. I was just going to ask.
Again, look at that. See, you can almost tell when I played a bit, I was that creative visionary midfielder, mate, when I could see the game before it happened.
I was just going to ask you to tell people how they could get in touch. You beat me to it. You've done that. So thank you for joining us. I do appreciate it. Was at very short notice.
No, real pleasure, guys, as always. Anytime.
Yeah, we only decided to do this last night. So thank you. You know, as we said to Paul and so we appreciate your time. We know you're very busy people. You've got plenty of other things to be getting on with. So thank you for that. And Tross, I'm sure we will see you again soon. Tross, for those who doesn't know, has been a regular fixture, not just on the Knees Up Mother Brown forum, but web forums going back to Two Bob and Mangler
back in the day, mate. Yeah,
sites like that from
the original West Ham forum, mate, when that came up.
Very much so, yeah. From gosh, must be 20 years ago now. But
the internet was in black and white.
Internet, when internet used to make funny noises through more.
Those were the days, lad. Those were the days.
What you mean? It's not supposed to do that.
You take care. Good luck with your gardening. As I say, I shall come to you for some tips.
That would be good, mate.
In the near future, if I ever need someone.
Always welcome.
Gents,
thank you and all the guys at Knees Up Mother Brown for your ongoing and outstanding work, Graham. Absolute pleasure as always. Cheers, gentlemen.
It's a pleasure being part of it. Yeah. So thanks. There's Tross from Hammers United. Thank you to him. No doubt we'll be in touch again soon to see what's happening there. But looking good out there in deepest, darkest Essex, as you can see. The sun's still shining out there. Wasn't shining on Stratford this afternoon, was it, fellas? For West Ham fans, we were trounced, I think is probably a fair description of the manner in which we conceded 5 goals at home to a championship side. We were saying the other day, Rio, weren't we, that we hadn't managed to keep a clean sheet in pre-season, and I think we sort of went above the the call of duty there today. But just on that, just kind of been thinking, do you think that's sort of a message to the board in some way from the players? I haven't seen the game. We were talking while it was on, but I just sort of wondered, it's pretty unusual to go down that heavily to a championship side or a side in a lower division. So do you think there might be something in that?
To be honest, I don't. I just think it's pure ineptness. We saw it all last season. Our ability to ship goals galore, in often bizarre manner. I just think it's a continuation. But what with the discord going on at the moment, balled against player now.
Yeah,
it's obviously escalated, and the only thing it really sends out is how desperate we are for reinforcements, and it sends out a message to other clubs that what money we do have, which obviously isn't a lot, they're going to strap us up for as much as they can.
We've spoken about reinforcements, of course, before, and I'm glad you mentioned that because it gives me a nice link into what I was going to come on to. We've spoken a lot about the things that have gone on this week, but something we haven't really sort of talked in depth about. There's a couple of transfer links that we've seen this week, and the timing of them was interesting, shall we say. We were told shortly after the news that Grady Diangana was on his, or at least the club at West Ham had accepted an offer for Grady Diangana from West Bromwich Albion, that we were looking at Said Benrahma from Brentford as a potential replacement. The club sort of went cool on that link 24 hours or so after that. But the same thing happened yesterday, didn't it? Following the news that Grady had signed for West Brom, we saw a link arise regarding James Tarkowski, of Burnley. Now, this is something the board have been charged with before, isn't it? This kind of putting advantageous links out in the press. Do you think this might be another example of that, or do you think these are genuine, links that players we're looking at?
As much as I like to believe it is genuine, because I think he's a very good defender and exactly what we need at the moment.
Yeah.
The rather derisory fee mentioned, £20 million for an England international, probably his team star player the last couple of years, it's unrealistic, isn't it? We just sold a youngster for allegedly 18, and we're offering that and a bit of shrapnel on top for an established Premier League player.
Well, yeah, I mean, there were rumours last year when Leicester were involved in particular. We're looking at Tarkowski that they'd been quoted 40 million. So I know it's said that there were rumours. Of course, we should point out that rumours surfaced on Burnley forums, Up the Clarets, I think it's called, on Thursday, that Tarkowski put in a transfer request. We don't know if there's anything behind that. It was just a rumour. It's not been confirmed or unconfirmed or denied by the club. But perhaps I think he's got 2 years left on his contract. Maybe that come into it, but even still, 20 million's a bit. It's just one of those for show, isn't it?
It's pick a number. Let's hope it's not going to be anywhere nearly good enough to be accepted. And let's say we tried, and repeat ad nauseum for any other player coming.
Have we? Who can you think of in recent history where we've done that? I'm trying to think now. Where we've sort of gone in with a ridiculous bid that's not likely to be to be accepted.
Far too many to recall. Probably so many that it slipped my mind. But yeah, it just seems like we do that. I think was it Carvalho when we initially tried to buy him.
That's what I was thinking of. Yeah.
They wanted 20 million. We offered about 3.
That was it. And a packet of peanuts.
In the background, going, this bloke won't haggle, and eventually it gets called off, doesn't it?
Yeah, you're right. There's definitely been a few. I'd have to go through our news archive on KUMB to see those. Yeah. But no, are you kind of with Rio on that one? That it would be a good side, but it's unlikely. We're talking about specifically.
It was depressingly predictable right from the second that it became clear Diangana was on his way. When the club issued its official statement to say gone, and I haven't got it in front of me, but so I apologise if I get it wrong somewhere along the lines, but it did say something along the lines of the club's accepted a bid, and we've decided to let him go because we want during this difficult time because we want to focus our priorities on other parts of the pitch. Words to that effect.
Yeah.
And there were 2 things that struck me there. One was the phrase "at this difficult time." Well, whose fault is it that it's difficult? And don't shout virus at me because I'm not having that. Yeah. And secondly, it was how long before the papers talk about us being linked with someone else. And lo and behold, it was Tarkowski. Yeah. And one of the things that I'm thinking about in this transfer window is you're a selling club. West Ham come up to you and they say we'd like to buy your defender, midfielder, striker, whatever, for a particular fee. Now, even if that fee is a level that's maybe acceptable to you as a club, and even if you're happy with some sort of instalment deal, because transfer fees by and large are generally paid by instalments. It's not just us. How much are you going to trust West Ham to actually make the payments?
Yeah.
At the moment, because it is. I don't know how true this is, but it's been rumoured again this week that we still haven't paid the last 2 tranches of the Haller fee.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about this. I mean, we've just been welcomed by our good friend Paul Walker. Paul, I'll come to you just a second, buddy. If you can bear with me for just a moment. But yeah, no, what do you make of that? Do you think that's legitimate? Do you think we really haven't paid that off? I mean, when was it? That first one was due around May, June time, wasn't it?
There was one due around May and one end of July, beginning of August, I think. And the word on the street. Now, as I say, I don't know how true it is or not, but it seems to be that it has been rumoured that we haven't made those payments, which then suddenly, then Diangana goes away, and it's to concentrate on other areas of the pitch. Eintracht are sitting there going, so even that, if that's true, that's gone before we've had a chance to actually strengthen other areas of the pitch.
It does seem unlikely, doesn't it? Bearing in mind that we sold Ayeti and Hugill. I mean, as we have discussed before. Well, that's it, wasn't it? That was supposed to be that to cover that first $5 million payment.
Because originally that was going to be a loan deal.
Yeah.
And then Eintracht sort of rang us up and say, "Hey, remember us?" And so we went back to Celtic and said something along the lines of, that loan, well, we need it to be a permanent deal. This is how much we want.
Yeah, yeah. Of course, we believe that Hugh Gill, the deal is only 2.6 million up front, so that's not even going to cover one payment to Eintracht. But anyway, we shall perhaps come back to that in a little while. I am delighted to welcome our final guest of the afternoon. He is, of course, someone who'll be well known to anybody who is a regular on KUMB, one of our most consistent writers, someone who's worked in the field of journalism all his life and now provides content for Knees Up Mother Brown, quite often scathing of our ownership, I think it's fair to say. How are you doing, Mr. Walker?
I'm okay, thank you, but particularly after seeing that this afternoon, I'm not so sure.
Did you manage to sit through the game? We had it on in the background, but we were kind of discussing, other things at the time.
Well, I was fighting desperately with Facebook, thinking it was my fault, when it turns out that the club eventually said, our Facebook feed isn't working, we're now putting it somewhere else. So eventually I found it on YouTube. But
that sounds about right.
Quite a bit of it was probably a good idea, because I've seen the goals since, and I've seen Sunday League defending better than that. Some of it was absolutely atrocious. The goalkeeper probably threw in two. Neither fullback were particularly exciting, and Jack Wilshere came on for the last 15 minutes and found himself being overrun in a friendly. It wasn't particularly exciting, I must admit.
We spoke during the game about, there was a couple of substitutions early on, wasn't there? I think Ben Johnson, was that a tactical choice, or was there any injury involved there?
Well, that was the bit where I was fighting with Facebook, but I understand.
Okay.
But I understand that it was he was taken off for 25 minutes, wasn't he?
That's right. Yeah.
Oh, that was a very unimpressive 25 minutes.
It was.
It's a shame, because Johnson had, it was that bad, was it? Because Johnson has done quite well. I think we're looking upon him as being a young player coming through the ranks who can play left and right back, which, it makes him invaluable. But I don't think he had that greater first half today. But I just wondered whether I was watching a team that was still recoiling a bit, maybe from what happened the previous night and then the day before when Grady was sold. They obviously have a WhatsApp group, and they probably talk to each other an awful lot.
Who doesn't these days? Everyone's got a WhatsApp group.
I would be very surprised if David Moyes didn't know what Mark Noble was going to say. Certainly his colleagues did, because there's been a whole raft of them since who've liked it, tweeted it, agreed with him. We have a dressing room which seems to be at odds with the people who run the club, which, from Mark Noble's point of view, he has been their figurehead here as captain. He stands up and he does all the talking they want him to do. But suddenly, middle of the evening, yesterday evening, his attitude changed a fair bit. And I think he'd probably been angry during the day. I think it's no secret that he looked after Grady quite well, that Grady is a big friend of Declan Rice, both signed about roughly the same time. And I think that all the team spirit that had been acquired during, say, from June onwards by the manager, almost evaporated in 48 hours. Shooting yourself in the foot is not, doesn't put it mildly, really.
You have obviously been around various clubs over the years in your capacity as a sports journalist. Have you ever seen anything quite like that?
I've never seen a club captain come out and criticise, even obliquely like that, his own board. Astonishing, really. And it took me back a bit when I saw it. I thought, first of all, that Mark was being brave, maybe putting into words what the rest of the squad were thinking. I'm not sure how much that helps in 24 hours down the line, because we're supposed to have made approaches for the lad from Brentford, now the lad from Burnley. They're asking for money way above what we've got for Grady. And I don't even understand the logic of that, to be honest. They surely would have known what sort of fees clubs were looking for beforehand. I mean, the boy coming from Brentford, very unlikely. Why do you get rid of a young, bright, up-and-coming kid, reasonably cheap as well? Get rid of him and then buy somebody who's dearer and going to cost you huge wages.
Yeah,
the logic defeats me, I must admit. And then you actually announce that you made an approach for the Burnley defender almost within minutes of the announcement of what happened with Grady and what happened with Mark.
Yeah.
You wonder whether it was orchestrated in some way. Let's get something out quickly because the fans are going to be more upset than they already are. Well,
yeah, I'm glad you
saying
mentioned
the
that,
very thing
because...
just before you came on, Paul.
Yeah, we would discuss. Yeah, as Noam says, we were discussing that very issue about the calculated nature of those leaks to John Percy and Matt Law at the Telegraph, especially with regards to Tarkowski. Coming back very briefly to the tweet, it was calculated, wasn't it, by Noble? It's the manner in which those responses from his fellow teammates came in within minutes or hours. The responses from former teammates suggest that wasn't just coincidental and it wasn't a spontaneous thing. Would you agree?
No, I would agree with you there. Mark is not a stupid man. He's been around this football club all his life. He's been around the East End and Essex all his life. He understands the club. He gets it. And I don't think that what he said was off the top of his head or abrupt remark. I think it was calculated. I think the players knew it was going to happen, and I'd be astonished if David Moyes didn't know it was going to happen. I'd love to know what he's saying, or if there is a press conference after the match today, what he's going to be saying about it, because people who are there must ask him.
Yeah, yeah, you'd think that would be the first question on everyone's lips, wouldn't it? You know, how much did you know?
And he's been left with a situation of a disappointed dressing room, an angry dressing room. And this game today should have been the final touches of the build-up to the first game of the season. Well, it's in disarray now, isn't it?
Yeah, it's certainly looking that way. No, Newcastle next week. We've just shipped 5 against Bournemouth. If you're in David Moyes' shoes, I guess you're hoping for a couple of decent signings, aren't you, within the next few days?
Well, you're hoping, as we've said already this evening, that Declan Rice doesn't pick up a knock. You're hoping that Fabianski doesn't pick up anything away with Poland. We think Souček's unlikely to be available, don't we, for the
Scotland game has been cancelled, hasn't it? We know he was pulled out of the squad for Friday's game. We know they were due to play Scotland on Monday, but that game has now been cancelled. So I guess it depends what the particular rules are. If it's a 2-week quarantine period out there as well, because obviously everyone's different, aren't they? Every country.
I think he has been in contact with somebody in the Czech. It may not be a player, but somebody in the Czech setup has got it. And I think my understanding is that he won't be available. On the face of what happened today, where we had a midfield that looked like Swiss cheese. It was just everybody's just walking through it. And we need Rice back and we need Souček back as soon as possible. I guess the one bright spark to things is that Newcastle are barely in much better position. They shipped 5 to Middlesbrough last week, so they're not a happy bunch as well, especially as their takeover didn't happen.
Yes.
So there are worse clubs to be playing, I think, but of course
we'll be playing those in the 6 weeks following the Newcastle game, won't we? We've got all the big clubs to cut. Rio, Souček, that's a massive loss for West Ham, isn't it? If he's not available for Newcastle.
Yeah, and the circumstances surrounding it horrendous, aren't they? I mean, we can't even lose a decent player to injury anymore. It's just.
We're losing players because they know someone who's been sick.
Yeah, exactly. And again, it's just so typically West Ham, isn't it? You know, and after the way he ended the season, but he doesn't just offer like a physical and mobile presence in midfield, which we desperately lack. He also offers the goal threat. So, can we call the season off, please? Because it's not looking good.
Well, can we do like the season ticket thing? We can put it on hold until the next year. That'd be good, wouldn't it? Paul, how likely do you think it is that David Moyes is going to make some signings this week?
I'd be amazed if many. It comes down to how much money we've got. I mean, they're bandying figures around which don't seem to tally with the money that they've actually brought in. The fee for Grady was in instalments anyway. I mean, someone's not driven up with a big bag of cash of £18 million and put it on David Sullivan's lawn. That's not happened. They paid a down payment, and I would think the money that we've got from that might just cover the first instalment for Haller. And that's me being a bit cynical, but I don't see where that money's coming from. Or the players willing to come here. Now, that's another aspect of this. I know that from internally, I'm impressed with Mark Noble. I like the fact that he's kind of stood up and said what he said. But doesn't that give a slightly worrying aspect of players coming into a club if they see that sort of disharmony? So who do we get? Who do we get that we can push into that side in a week and solve the central defence and the two fullbacks? I mean, we're not going to. We might get a player on loan. We might get two players on loan, but we haven't been able to afford the fees to cover that. People on free transfers want wages. Well, the lad who's gone to Celtic, Duffy, was on free, wasn't he? We couldn't even afford his wages. Now, where are we with this? Just before the Grady thing broke on, whenever it was, a Thursday, a very good friend of mine, who is what I consider to be the best in the know journalist I've ever worked with, he put a tweet out saying West Ham need to sell badly. A choice of word which was unfootball-like. And I looked at it and I thought, there's something going wrong here. There's something more than just we're looking for players and we haven't got a huge amount of money. Yeah. It looked like we needed to bring money in very quickly for whatever reason. I'm not sure that we're being told the full extent of our financial problems at the moment. On the one hand, you look at the fact there was a share issue. They've taken out the usual loan, which is put together probably about 70 million quid. Where's all this going? What is it being spent on? I mean, other clubs have had problems with the virus, obviously. Everybody's lost money because of that. Nobody more than anybody else, I wouldn't have thought, roughly the same. So why are Everton spending on what they're spending? Why Newcastle signed 6 players? You can go through the whole bottom half of the table. We haven't even tried to sign people. That worries me.
If you, that's a really good point. I mean, and pretty much all the players that we were linked with and we were told were Moyes' top targets at the end of last season have all gone, haven't they? The lad from QPR has gone to Palace. Matty Cash gone to Villa. So on and so forth.
The free transfer, is it Ryan Fraser from Bournemouth? A decent wide player, in my view, works up and down the line really well. Yeah, I believe he wanted reasonable money. We couldn't even, that hasn't happened. The other guy, Hendrick, who's gone from Burnley to Newcastle, a free transfer. Yeah. I mean, that's a Premier League footballer who, if we can't compete for free transfers, what exactly are we doing? And what has Moyes been left with? In an ambiguous position to a certain extent. It looks like Grady was sold against his advice. Yes. Although you're never quite sure about that. And if you didn't want him to go, and players are being sold regardless, well, for what reason? It can't just be. People keep saying, well, what would you have done? Well, I wouldn't have sold anybody. Yeah. We ended the season on a reasonable run. Grady came back, he's a new player. Lots of the fans were really looking forward to seeing him. He'd been away, he'd learned a bit of trade, got hardened up a bit. We wanted to see the benefits of that. Well, we're not. And the player has gone somewhere else. That's taken away the one bit of hope of a summer from West Ham fans, who were looking forward to just seeing how the boy did. They didn't expect Anderson, he didn't expect it to come from Lanzini. They've been trying to knock both of them out and they can't get rid of them. Yarmolenko, the same. The wages they're on is prohibitive for people coming in for them. So we are lumbered with 3 players on big wages who Moyes would probably like to do something about. And now it looks like we're going to let Anderson go on loan to Arsenal. We're going to get a loan fee. I mean, how much of his wages are we going to be paying? This to a Premier League club, a loan to a Premier League club, and we're going to be paying someone's wages?
Yeah, especially Arsenal as well, a club that traditionally are, purportedly bigger than West Ham. No, what do you make of that whole Anderson situation? We're told Arsenal are looking to pay a £5 million loan. Presumably that's a lump sum that Sullivan will be getting, in the club's coffers.
That's the key, isn't it? I think, we've been trying to off both Lanzini and Anderson is the rumour. The thing is that if we get Anderson out on loan to anybody, any fee is usually not in instalments. You get that pretty much for loan deals. Yeah. My understanding, anyway. I mean, people correct me.
No point in doing that.
It's more advantageous to us to get somebody out on loan.
Yeah.
Which, of course, if you're the sort of club taking him on loan, and you're sitting there and West Ham are financially strapped, you're saying, well, yeah, okay, 5 million, but if we're going to pay you 5 million, we'll want a bit of help with his wages, and because you want that 5 million now, at least wherever you're paying his wages, will only go out monthly, and you'll probably take that. I mean, we're talking typical West Ham. I understand that we're still paying Roberto's wages over in Spain, part of the deal that got him off our books. So West Ham are making a loss on a player that was a free transfer. Let's sink in for a minute. I mean, it's funny, but it's not funny.
Yeah, it's ludicrous. It's madness.
I mean, we're doing the same thing with Hugo at Norwich. We're paying some of his wages. He was on reputed to be 35,000, maybe a bit more than that with us, and he's not getting anywhere near that. So we've had to actually buy up his contract, and the same with Roberto. So we've got rid of them for 4 million and nothing, and we're actually paying wages for people that we've got off the books. It's the logic and the way the club is run bothers me. It really does. And I'm not a financial genius. It just concerns me that we see things happening with our place and not happening anywhere else. Really just doesn't happen like this anywhere else.
It's a very, very...
of course, we're in a situation we desperately need players in certain areas, and we're strapped for cash. You're a club with a player, you're going to sell, quite apart from the, do we sell to West Ham? We want to get our instalments in anyway, but we can sort of say, well, that's the fee if you want him, and Leicester will have him for that.
That's right, and that's exactly the point. I mean, the lad from Burnley, he's a Mancunian, born and bred in Manchester, Manchester United fan. Obviously playing for Burnley, he's living in the area. I'm not too sure that he will want to be involved at West Ham. It's a hell of a move at this time of year.
There were rumours, Paul, weren't there, that he moved back up north to be closer to his family anyway.
Well, he was at Brentford, wasn't he, for a while? I didn't think he was. When I looked his stats up, I wasn't aware that he was a Manc. But he comes from Moston, which is a tough old area in Manchester, and he's a Manchester United fan. I presume his family are northern as well.
Yeah.
I can't speak for everybody out there that I live near, but I know I'm pretty sure.
Know the area well, do you, sir? Rio, your thoughts on Anderson quickly before we carry on.
Yeah, it's just bizarre, isn't it? I mean, a player that really struggled last season for form. He's coveted by a proposed top 6 side. Although I think it's the worst Arsenal side I've seen in living memory.
Yeah.
But really picked up the end of last season under Arteta, and yet he can see the value in Anderson. He thinks he can get a tune out of that fiddle, and we're quite happy to let him go to not just the Premier League rival, but a club that really is years above us in stature and even with their problems in the way they're run, they're light years ahead of us.
Yeah, I suppose it would only be second in some way to the deal which saw Julian Faubert go to Real Madrid all those years ago, wouldn't it? In terms of bizarre transfers where we let players go to purportedly better clubs. I say purportedly. I don't think there's any doubt with regards to Real Madrid, but I wonder if we'll see Anderson falling asleep on the bench at the Emirates one day.
I'm going to say, I've played behind you, Graham. You're better than Phobeth because you actually fell asleep on a pitch.
That's undeniable, of course. I mean, no question. But Paul, one thing I do want to ask you is something that everybody's commented on today. One of the reasons that the show was called West Ham United, a club in crisis ? One thing we've all spoken of and discussed is the end game. Mark Noble's tweet, the Diangana situation. Do you feel that this is finally the beginning of the end for the current administration, GSB, essentially?
I think I'd like to think it was. They don't seem to have much empathy with the support. I mean, I sat and listened to the Hammers United guy who, while I was waiting to come on, really respect what they're doing. They're working their socks off, and the same with the independent people, really, really working hard, diligently, politely, trying to gain some sort of influence. I think I also heard him talk about a glass ceiling. And I think a glass ceiling is when you get near the chairman and his mate. They'll talk to the underling, to the middle range administration. But when you actually want to talk to Sullivan and talk to Gould, well, that doesn't happen. Gould might talk to various one or two blogs, people that we all work that one out. They don't think they're really that interested or bothered about what we think. I think that's an awful thing to admit, but I don't see them coming into this wanting to be open and helpful. So the suggestion is that Sullivan won't sell until 23 when the money being paid back to the revenue is needed, and that disappears. I think he'll sit it out. I think he could easily sit it out. He's gone through 3 relegation battles in 5 years. One more, which is probably what we're looking at now. Will that make much difference to him? He actually, I don't know. I mean, the value of the club has dropped, as has everything else during the pandemic. The figure of 800 million keeps on being mentioned. Well, you could buy 3 Premier League clubs for that at the moment, because I don't know what we value at 300 million now. Various other clubs, a similar sort of fee. Well, he's not going to want to sell for that. He's going to want to sell for a lot higher than that. Maybe thinking the stadium might come his way. I don't know about that. I'd like to think that, yes, maybe this is the beginning, but with no pressure from any other board members, with no consortium having an influence on what goes on in the club. It's just the two of them. I mean, Brady is a paid employee. Tripp is just sitting on the outside, from what I understand and what people think. Rumours are that he's working diligently to try and find people to put a consortium together. But as someone said earlier, there's no other club in this Premier League runs like we do. I mean, even Ashley up at Newcastle, who they've been trying to get out for a long, long time, he puts a lot of money into that club and doesn't charge interest.
I mean, I've made that point before on the podcast. I think Ashley's invested somewhere in the region of £120 million into Newcastle. Has never taken a penny of interest out yet. You compare that to David Sullivan and David Gold, who have charged various interest rates. When I interviewed David Sullivan at his house in 2014, I think it was, or 15, I inquired as to the interest rate then, and he said it was 7%. Following a bit of a furore. After that, they reduced it to 4%, but still, and we made the point, Pinky, I think it was, made the point earlier that they've raised £18.7 million from interest from their loans, which is pretty much equivalent.
I raised that very point with the Baroness at a meeting. The one time I ever bothered, to waste an evening of my life on these meetings, and I said, the last set of accounts, interest was being charged at a rate of 7%. Mm-hmm. I said, we've got at the moment base rates are at a historic all-time low. How can you justify why is interest being paid on this at all? And her initial response was, she said, well, there are tax reasons for this. You know how complicated tax is, don't you? I just remember the look at her face. I pointed out that I've got initials after my name for doing tax stuff It's my living. I passed exams in it. So yes, I did understand, and I couldn't work out why, for tax reasons, the interest rate should be so. She flopped along about commerciality and confidentiality and this sort of thing, and all that.
I mean, to be fair, no, when we did that interview with David Sullivan at his house, I asked him why he wasn't supplying the loans that are interest free, and he told me at the time that they weren't allowed to do so. I mean, we've got the audio of him. No, it's so it's just mistruths and false information, really. I guess, Rio, doesn't this all come back to what we were saying with Tross about this is all unnecessary? They don't need to if they'd have been straight with the supporters from the beginning. When we look back and examine their administrator, their tenure at the club, we can go right back to the day they walked in the door, pretty much. When you'll recall how Scott Duxbury, and when he was CEO, promised the season ticket discount, right, to supporters. And the first thing that Karen Brady and her team did when they came in was attempt to renege on that, was it not? And then, they said they hadn't done their due diligence, if I remember rightly. But, it is just so unnecessary, isn't it? It didn't have to be this way.
Yeah. I mean, going back to the season ticket thing, I think she said it will cost the club X amount, £1 million.
£1 million. £1 million.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. Well, we could. I think her quote was something along the lines of, "We could have signed a player with the money that we had to give you back." I'm not sure that may be a couple of Meadows or a Benny McCarthy, perhaps, but I'm not sure who they would have signed for that even 10 years ago. But
yeah,
it is just so unnecessary, isn't it? All of this.
Yeah, I mean, everything they do wrong, they just never learn from, and they lurch from one disaster to another. And you've got to think, before they actually took over us 10 years ago, they had an incredibly lengthy stint at Birmingham City, where they made very much the same mistakes, which we was warned by, was it Mickey Bluenose on the
that was him.
Forum?
That was him.
The classic post. A lot of people went, "Oh no," and there's never going to happen here. The West Ham fans, and
that's true.
He's like Nostradamus because he foresaw everything.
It was on the nail, wasn't it? Absolutely bang on the nail. Yeah.
Particularly the bit about the players that we were going to sign during the season ticket renewal period.
Yeah.
Jean-Pierre Papin was linked at one point, and things like that.
Yeah.
But he was spot
coming
on.
back. Sorry. Coming back to the issue we were speaking about a few moments ago there, Paul, we were talking about, you were talking about David Sullivan sitting it out till 2023. I'm just wondering whether the fact that when he was at Birmingham, he was 15 years younger. This is, he's 71 now. He's no spring chicken. I'm just wondering, is there a possibility that he's now looking at this entire situation and thinking, do you know what? I mean, the sort of autumn being kind of my years, I can do without this aggro now.
I would think, yes, I'm sure he's thinking that way because it has been a fair bit of aggro. He still would want a decent price, I would have thought. Anything less than that, and the whole tenure, what they've done for the last 10 years, the reason they came here, collapses all around them. I mean, we're in debt the same amount of money, aren't we, than when he took over 10 years ago?
Considerably more, isn't it?
Considerably more. It's not much different. I mean, we've gone round in circles with 3-4 relegation fights in those 10 years.
We just owe it to different people.
It's just how it's different people. That's right. But know that everybody would like me to say, yes, I think Sullivan's on his way out and he's thinking very hard about going. But I don't think we really know the tenure of the man, or we know what he's like. He had 15 years at Birmingham, so he's done 25 years in this type of job without a vast amount of success, I think is the best way of putting it. With antagonism from Birmingham fans, antagonism from West Ham fans. I've got a feeling it's water off a duck's back, actually. He's seen it all, and it doesn't really matter him too much as long as the thing that doesn't go broke. And I mean, I can only guess that in the last 6 months that his business empire hasn't exactly handle the situation as well. It's all rent and property, isn't it? Which has taken a bit of a hit, I thought.
Absolutely. Well, this is something that's been raised, isn't it, on the forum this week?
Same thing applies to Gould, whose business is basically retail.
Well, this is what I was going to come on to, because there was a story, wasn't there, about Vanessa, I think it was, his daughter, challenging the rents that they have to pay for the 80 or so high street and summer stores that they've got.
Which all shops are trying that argument. You hear all over we've got the same where I live, the town centre here. People are complaining, the shops are complaining about the rents. Yeah. It seems to be one way of trying to sort of cover a black hole, is to try and get your rent reduced. This is a very difficult time for it. I don't wish it on anybody, to be honest, because businesses going broke, going under, affects everybody in the end. It affects people's jobs, it affects their families. So I'm not wishing it on anybody. Sure. You can see where possibly they're coming from on this. If they can get out, I mean, if somebody comes along with a consortium, and I heard someone on the radio saying that there's a couple of American possibilities, or somebody from Qatar, and he might have even turned down a bid some while ago. I mean, I've got friends who work in the city who can keep on telling me that people are looking to buy the club. Well, it doesn't seem to happen actually, but I tend to believe the people who are talking to me about it, because they've got no axe to grind one way or the other. It's just one of the. I don't know. I would like to think that it's possible. Maybe we're getting closer to it, but he's still going to want to do a deal, isn't he?
You would think so, wouldn't you? I mean, I guess the one difference between the two is DG is considerably older. I think is he 83 now, 82, 83.
And he's not been in the most robust of health.
Well, we know he hasn't. Yeah, exactly. We know he hasn't been particularly well of late or recently anyway. I'm not sure the interest is there from the daughters to get involved with West Ham, seeing as, I mean, you look at it.
Well, it still worries me is if he sells, he'll sell to Sullivan.
Well, I guess that's the obvious thing, and we know he's pretty much a bit of a silent partner in a way now, isn't he? Because it doesn't look like he has a lot of control or interest in the running of the club. I mean, it seems that DG's involvement doesn't really extend to posting a few tweets every now and again, which even that he's scaled back on, because he tended to upset people quite frequently.
He tended to tweet first and think later, didn't
he? Yeah.
I mean, you wonder whether the shares he owns, which is a minority shareholding now, which he's always said he's going to pass on to his family. Yes. You wonder whether that might be the chink in the armour somewhere along the line, that he might decide that he actually wants to sell his shares. Now, you would presume he would offer them to Sullivan first.
Yeah.
And that's an open debate whether Sullivan will buy them up. He has bought up shares that have come on the market, hasn't he, in the last thing?
He's increased his.
I mean, the share issue produced one little nugget of somebody on that board that didn't take up their offer of share issue, and it wasn't gold because he said he had. So, and Sullivan took up the slack. Whether Sullivan would do the same thing again is open to debate. Maybe Gould would sell them, put them on the market, and if that happens, you would have a consortium maybe buying in, which would challenge Sullivan's control.
I wonder
that's the only way I can see out of this. Well,
what is Gould's
by my friend in the city
shareholding? Can we remember? Does anyone remember?
I'm just looking. I'll dig that out for you in just a second. But Rio, what do you think about David Gould? I mean, do you think that he might be looking at this thinking, this isn't what I bought into. I wanted to, come home triumphantly to my old club, and in my years at, the club I used to support from 442 Green Street, as we all know.
Did he live at 442 Green Street? He's never mentioned.
Not that he mentions it.
No.
I'm sure he never knew that, really.
Not sure how that came to mind. But
it's I still don't understand their motive, to be honest, because yes, Gould has got that history. As we know, he lived opposite. What was he really expect to attain other than money? Because he come in, apparently when the Icelandics did mess up, because through no fault of their own, Gould and Sullivan laughed heartily, saying, I knew that was going to happen. I told you that was going to happen. Let's ride in on our chariot and sweep up. Sweep up what exactly?
Yeah.
They're not coming and swept up any trophies. They're not coming and swept up any goodwill. But they're not swept up a lot of cash.
Well, as we said, you know, £18.7 million in interest payments. Karen Brady, as we heard earlier, has earned around £8 million in wages over the course of 10 years, including, of course, that £1 million bonus she took for moving the club to Stratford a couple of years after she said the thing about, you know, the £1 million off the season ticket fees, potentially costing the club a new player, which was interesting. The current shareholders, this is the breakdown. This is how it works out currently. David Sullivan increased his shareholding during the recent share rights issue from 51.1% to 51.5%. David Gold maintained his shareholding of 35.1%. Trip Smith, as we know.
Interesting.
Trip Smith, as we...
I think if somebody bought his shareholding out, I think the usual stock exchange rules is if you buy more than, I think it's 29.9% of a company, you have to put in a bid for the rest of the shares to the other shareholders.
Right.
So if somebody sort of with somebody well-heeled enough to buy out David Gold came in, that's a way in, I suppose.
Okay. The remaining shareholders, Trip Smith, as we know, under the name of WHU LLC, purchased the outstanding, the remaining 10% that the Icelandic consortium, I'm trying to think of the name, the bank now, it escapes me, begins with a B, that used to own those. He picked that up, didn't he? And then there's a remaining 3.8%. Well, actually, it was 3.8%. It's reduced to 3.4%. Now, this is, I think, comes back to, Paul, where you were saying that one of the shareholders didn't take up the option. And it was believed to be either John and Daniel Harris, which is the father and son team, or Terence Brown. Who,
I think the Harris brother.
The Harris, the father and son team, yeah. Now, Terry Brown, of course, was back on the board after, you know, swanning off into the sunset with several million himself in 2006, wasn't it? But anyway, that's the breakdown. So David Sullivan is, of course, the majority shareholder, 51.5%. Paul, do you think there is an opportunity there, or do you think it's likely that the shareholders might do another, you know, share rights issue? We saw £30 million pumped into the club a couple of months ago. Mr. Pink Palermo, who was with us earlier but had to leave, unfortunately, has made a big thing about, you know, the fact that if the club's short of money, why don't they create another share rights issue? Is there any possibility of that, in your opinion?
Well, I wouldn't like to guess on that. My financial knowledge doesn't stretch that far. But
fair enough.
If you can do another rights issue as quickly after that one, I don't know. There might be some restriction about how often you can do it. But if they did it again, it's going to cost another £30 million from somewhere, isn't it? Now, admittedly, people could say the £18 million that they've taken out on interest could happily be reinvested in a share issue because they've, you know, just put it back basically. But I really don't know.
Okay.
I would think that they would need to have somebody else, and that's why they've tried, haven't they, to have someone else to come in and help a bit. But not take any control. But people, you know, the Americans and the Middle Eastern guys, if they're going to come in, they're going to want control. I mean, the Americans, particularly at Liverpool, the guy who's taken over at Everton, Bill Kenwright, for years wouldn't give up control. But now they've got a system, I think, where he's maintained his shareholding, but there's an agreement that the board always votes for the new owner. So that covers that problem about not having control. So Bill is still majority shareholder, but he will always vote with the other guy. That's how I think that's broken down. And that other guy's put in fortunes. How many players have Everton bought in the last 3 weeks?
Madness. Rodriguez has gone there, isn't he? The Decore, isn't it, from Watford?
Yeah. Probably £100 million being spent on players.
But I mean,
the virus has been up in Liverpool just as much as it's been down in London.
I think, but I mean, we complain about the transfers at West Ham, but I think Everton probably even exceed us in terms of money squandered on players, don't they? Over the years, it seems to be a bit of a graveyard. I mean, what did they spend on Sigurdsson? Was it 44 million or or something. That was it. Iwobi from Arsenal. They spent 30 odd
I
million.
think it was wasn't it the lad from Swansea? Well, that was Sigurdsson. Weren't we in for him as well? Mind you, we're in for everybody, aren't we? At some particular point.
Do you mean really in for him, or a Sullivan in for him?
Well, that's the point I'm making. I mean, we are linked with about 150 players every single transfer window. We all seem to think, oh, we're going to have that player, we're going to have that player, but it doesn't happen, does it? I mean, years and years of waiting for it to happen. It doesn't really happen.
No, it certainly hasn't in recent years. To be fair, I mean, we had a bit of a splurge, didn't we, under Pellegrini, I guess, but even still, it only worked.
Let's not go on Pellegrini. I mean, what a bad mistake that was.
Well, I suppose you can put down the current malaise to that decision, can't you, really? When he came in.
I mean, I think you've read my stuff on this, I think, Graham, more than once.
I might have done.
But if anybody does read it, I mean, you look at it and you see they went for Pellegrini and their eyes were raised in Manchester. I've got people who I still know who have been, quite close to City, quite surprised that we went for him. Could he not see us coming? I mean, that him and his mates have made a fortune out of us. It was employing his son. The two guys employing their sons as scouts. I mean, what sort of nepotism is that we're talking about? And he's walked off into the sunset. And all we're getting now is all the mistakes are Pellegrini's fault. Well, the person who signs the checks is responsible. If you don't sign the checks and you say to your manager, you're not having that player, the manager's got a choice. He walks or he puts up with it. If he walks, they'll find somebody else. Sorry, I don't go with this argument. I've seen it too often. Pellegrini is responsible for all of this. He's responsible for a lot of it, but the buck stops with the person at the top.
Rio, how often have we? Sorry, Paul. Rio, how often have we heard, Mr. Sullivan take credit for players when they work out, and yet when they don't, it tends to be the fault of somebody else, doesn't it? I think that's quite a common thing, isn't it, at the club?
Yeah, Denver Bar was he signing, wasn't it? I think he even tried to claim a little bit of Payet.
They absolutely claimed Payet, didn't they? It was. Yeah. I think it was Jack as well. Might have claimed some credit for that one.
The likes of Wally Lopez and Wellington Paulista were swept under the carpet for some reason. Him and Jack might like to play for Championship manager every now and then and delve in that side of things, but you're not a scout. You're not a football man. Leave it to the people who know what they're doing. And if you're the businessman you claim to be, when it comes to signing the checks, do your work, do your homework. Because under your tenure, the club that you want to sell for X amount of £1 million has decreased in value. That is not good business sense.
We, to sort of touching on that subject, we thought Paul spoken there about Pellegrini bringing his own team. Of course, part of that team was Mario Husilos, known, wasn't it, who was supposed to be a director of football. We thought that was the end of David Sullivan effectively signing players, acting as a technical director or a director of football. But I just wonder if he's using that now as a reason to revert to the old system by saying that we invested this money, we did what you wanted, we brought in an experienced manager, we brought in an experienced director of football, and it's all gone to coin a phrase, tits up. And it looks like we're back at square one now, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's an old Greek logic thing, isn't it? Because that director of football was rubbish, therefore all directors of football are rubbish. I can't remember what the logical argument was. There's a name for that argument in sort of Greek stuff, but it's. I don't even think he really believes that, but it's a nice, convenient excuse. I'll save a few bob. Last one we hired wasn't any good. I'll save a few bob and do it myself. I guess the real argument is it's what I often say when I'm watching the players on a player on a pitch who misses a penalty, who's on 40 grand a week. Now, if you want someone to miss penalties, I'll do it for 20 grand a week. But it's it is a nice, convenient scapegoat.
But are we back at square one though? Is that where we are with David Sullivan picking and choosing the players again? Is David Moyes effectively just I
think the point is that because we're so potless at the moment, there's no real picking and choosing of players to go. Sullivan's picking and choosing the ones that he wants us to be linked with before the season ticket renewal date.
Yeah.
You know, I can play that. Lionel Messi. You know, it's not hard picking players. You know, you're not going to be able to sign in a million years. You know, if we're not got any money, we're not going to buy any players. Then you can play that game, fantasy football, all you like.
Yeah, yeah. Gentlemen, I'm going to wrap up fairly soon because it's. I've just realised we've been on air for nearly 4 hours now.
Yes, my tea's getting cold, and I've got to cook it.
Oh, we'll all be round yours, Mr. Walker, for dinner then. In that case, because I think my wife's left the building and just given up.
I can hear clanking outside. That's in the right moment.
She's coming over here in a minute and make my tea, is she?
I was going to say, it'll be a long way to go for dinner if we're all going to Paul's house anyway. Not exactly up the road anymore, buddy, are you? But
no.
let's summarise. I mean, we came on to talk about West Ham United, a club in crisis. We've heard some really excellent views from everyone on the panel. Has made some really good points as usual. Our guests, Sue Watson, Paul Colborn, Stephen Cross, aka Tross, and of course Paul has come in and added some excellent stuff. Final summary: no. Are West Ham United a club in crisis? Yes or no? And feel free to elucidate a bit.
Oh, fair enough. You did say yes or no. I was going to say yes.
Well, give me a yes or no, and then elucidate on that.
There's a relevant phrase involving the chosen religion of the Pope. I think is one that immediately springs to mind here. Yeah, of course we are. More so than we have been for a while under this regime, on the grounds that before there was money, there always seemed to be a little bit of money. Now you haven't even got any money. So if we're not paying clubs for the transfers that the instalments that were due, how can you say anything else?
Okay, it's a yes from Noam. Noam, thank you for your contributions today. Much appreciated as always. Thank you for keeping.
By the way, England have just got a penalty with 1 minute of normal time to go. It's 0-0.
And can we confirm that Declan Rice is still?
He's still got 2 legs. England were reduced to 10 men. Walker, second yellow. The Icelandic guy gave away the penalty, has also got his second yellow for the handball. And I think Sterling's just going to try up to take it.
Well, stick with it. Let's see what happens.
Yep, okay. I've never seen that before. No, nothing happening. Yeah. Right. It's we're just waiting. Everyone's just stood around. I don't know what the referee's waiting for.
Paint a picture for us, Noam. It's 0-0, yes, and
0-0. 90 minutes are now up. We're 6 minutes into seconds into stoppage time, and Sterling has just rolled the ball gently in. It's one of those penalties you feel such an idiot as a goalkeeper for having dived out of the way of, because it rolled in slowly. England, I mean, I've had it on the background. England have been struggling to break down stubborn Icelandic defence, then got reduced to 10 men. Walker with a second yellow for studs up tackle that, whether or not there's an awful lot of contact, I don't know, but I've just seen the penalty again, straight down the middle along the ground, rolled it.
A sickener if you're a goalkeeper conceding those.
It missed the keeper's foot by that much.
Thank you, Noam.
So there you go. All this and updates too.
Great stuff. Brilliant. Well, thank you for keeping us abreast of what's been happening in Stratford and wherever it is, England, presumably Wembley. I mean, this is how much.
No, it's Reykjavik.
We're away. We're in Reykjavik. Okay, excellent. So yeah, good news.
Oh, hang on. What's happened here? Well, it's just gone up the other end. Gomez has just hauled down an Icelandic player. It's a penalty to Iceland.
Oh, it's all happening in Reykjavik. I was going to say sunny there, but I'm not sure. Are we at the time of the year when
sunny? Yeah,
they have about 4 hours sunlight a day, or are they?
Yeah, it's sun. You can see the sun's going down. Players gone into the box. He's got the wrong side of Gomez. There's contact. It's clumsy from Gomez, and he's gone down. Yeah, I'd say that's a penalty because there is definite contact. Gomez knew what he was doing. He was trying to make it look like an accident. England are now sort of trying to delay the taking of the penalty.
Okay. Let's come back. We'll come back to that one in a second. Let's see.
Yeah.
Let's see what happens. We are, of course, talking about West Ham United. Are they a club in crisis? Nome, it's an unequivocal yes from Nome. Rio, to sum up what we've been talking about all afternoon, is it a yes or a no from you?
It's an absolute yes. And also, I actually think we're at the lowest ebb possibly we've ever been as a club. You know, even under the bond scheme. Alienated.
The Icelandic player has skied the penalty into row Z.
Oh, there you go. Happy ending from Reykjavik then. Oh,
sorry.
Thanks, no. Thanks, no. Rio, that's some statement. The lowest ebb at which we've ever been.
Yeah. The bond scheme was awful. It alienated a lot of the support. It took years to rebuild that. But we still had their spiritual home. The players and the board weren't at each other's throats, which after last night's kind of developments with Noble's tweet, civil war looks like it's broken out. And we don't own a Ram Stadium. The support has been divided beyond belief by the move. Under the tenure of Golden and Sullivan, we've not only lost their home, we've lost their soul. And now, even bigger rifts than we've ever seen before of developing this club. And in a lot of respects, I see no way back until they actually they leave. And as Paul said, they're stubborn people. They're in it for money. Unless they get exactly what they want in terms of financial gain, as much as we all want them to go, and there are glimmers of hope, and I think the end is near, but we're at an awful ebb, an awful situation, and I truly believe it is the worst we've ever encountered.
Okay, pretty damning stuff from Rio there. The worst we've ever been, lowest ebb the club's ever been, worse than the bond scheme. Paul, you've only joined us recently for the last half hour or 40 minutes or so of the conversation. You part-timer, you. But you know, I'm sure you've been keeping as we said, keeping abreast of what everyone's been saying this afternoon. What's your summary of the situation? Are we definitely a club in crisis now?
I think we are, yes. I mean, I think what I've heard from my colleagues here, and so it's pretty obvious. There is a lot of money. We're constantly being told that by people who, you know, that the club used to inform us about things. And I don't see how we're suddenly going to go out and buy the quality of player necessary to make a significant alteration, unless there's a team spirit and there's a defensive attitude from people, so a defiant attitude. We have to wait and see. As you said, we got a difficult game to start with. We have played everybody twice. I don't really go down this. You know, the beginning of the season is awful. We got to play them all twice. Nobody thought that we were going to beat Chelsea or get a point at Old Trafford, but we did. So, but all that's down to team spirit, and a lot of this comes back to David Moyes now. Whether they could tack it all together, we have to see. I think there might be a signing or two maybe in this week, but they were talking about a centre back within a fortnight, weren't they? Omitting the fact that the season will be a week and a half old by the time he arrives. No, depressed about it, I'm afraid. Not a season I'm looking forward to be honest, mainly because we're not involved in it. I mean, I'd have been looking forward to coming down to London for next weekend. I'd have been struggling to get me away tickets for the various games that are coming up. The whole point of being a fan of a supporter of a football club like ours is that camaraderie that goes on. Well, we're all being stripped of that until maybe they allow people back into the grounds. But how many of the season ticket sales that there have been 30%? where we're not expecting. That's how I've done it. I want my seat, but I'm not so sure at my age whether I should be running up and down the motorways or the train lines in and out of Euston, because the virus hasn't gone away. And I think that there's something the club haven't really tried to address, to be honest. They were trying to sell season tickets up front, all your money at once. We'll give you money back. I thought that was scandalous. And then they came up with the 30% thing within 24 hours. No, I mean, I'm not looking forward to the season. I feel a bit remote from it, I must admit, particularly as we're not likely to be able to see some of the games on the telly, which we were expecting was going to happen. Yeah. And when will I see you again? I think is a song, isn't it? When will I see you?
Yes, thank you. That's the last thing you want to hear after all the depressing stuff we've sat through for the last 4 hours.
Here's a thought. They're quite happy for us to lend them money interest free, aren't they?
Yes, they are. They are. I thought that was dreadful. I thought the lack of empathy with the support of all ages. I mean, the people I knock around with, my son and his mates, are all 30, 40-year-olds. There's a lot of people of my age who are, you mentioned how old David Sullivan is. David Sullivan and I are separated by about 3 months. So, for the last 6 months, I've been being told that, I think we've had this discussion before, that I'm vulnerable. I think I'm only vulnerable to my wife if I stay here much longer, really.
And on that note, I guess we should just about wrap it up. My thanks go to everybody who's appeared on the show today, our regular panel, my fellow KUMB team members, Noam and Rio.
Cheers, thanks.
And Paul, of course, who are here now. Earlier on, we had the Pink Palermo, Bristol Hammer. Unfortunately, DL and Chalks couldn't make it this afternoon. On top of that, we've also been joined by Sue Watson from the West Ham United Independent Supporter Association, by Paul Colborn, the chairman of Hammers United, by Stephen Tross, the joint secretary of Hammers United. It's been a good star-studded cast, in fact, you might say, this afternoon. The very best of the independent fan base. Some excellent comments made by everybody, and it's a really valuable conversation. I hope everybody who's managed to tune in has taken something away from it. We do appreciate your support, of course. All those of you that have watched on YouTube, those of you that have commented in the chat, those of you that have done so on the KUMB forum and via our other social media channels. We will be back with Eyes Up Mother Brown, hopefully, for the Newcastle game. There's a little exclusive for you. It might be me on my own, because I might be the only one who's able to get a stream if it's not going out anywhere. But we do intend to be back. Hopefully we'll have another mod pod before then. Depends what's going on. I mean, we might be on every day at this rate. The way.
Can I have a rest before the next one?
Yes, well, I think we've done a month's worth of podcasts in one afternoon, haven't we, today? But
okay. I survived the
marathon modcast.
The marathon. We should have done this sponsored, shouldn't we, to raise funds?
We should have done. Yeah, that's for sure. But no, thank you to everyone for joining us this afternoon. As always, we do appreciate your support as we attempt to grow our YouTube channel. In the meantime, before we go live on here again, of course, come and join us on the KUMB forum. We're always on there. We're always posting. And happy to debate with everybody. You can get in touch with any of us privately if you need to via the PM system. What else have I forgotten? Subscribe and like and all that stuff below to be notified when we go live again. Oh, we've got the KUMB Mastermind show starting, haven't we, next week? We did. This is another little exclusive. We did our first pilot the other night. Rio's got a big grin on his face because
he won by a point.
Because Rio won our pilot show. Beat Noam, actually, just by the point. It was very, very close. And if we get a load of contests,
the Betway Cup of quizzes, though, I think you'll find.
It certainly was. But if we get some more competitions that are that close when we do the actual series beginning next week, I'll be very happy. But it was good fun, and hopefully that'll be something that you can all get involved in. Even if you're not taking part in the show, you can sit at home and guess the answers to yourself. For those who are unaware, the show format mirrors that of the Magnus Magnusson BBC long-running series. Paul, have we got you involved in this? I'm not sure we have yet, have we?
No, we haven't. No, I decided that I didn't know enough.
We have to work on that one, gentlemen, I think. See if we can get Paul involved. But anyway, we've got the first episode is going to be going live next week. The first round will be taking place one show a night before we move on to the second round, and then it will be quarterfinals, semi-finals, and a final to figure out who is the most knowledgeable West Ham supporter out there anyway. But that should be a bit of good fun. That's enough of me. I've banged on enough today. The vocal cords are actually beginning to pack up right about now. 4 hours. We're pretty much exactly 4 hours into the show. So I'm going to call it a day there. Thank you to everyone who's taken part. Thank you to all of you for your comments. And we shall see you all very, very soon. And finally, come on, you Irons.
Go, Irons.
Come on, you Irons.